Okay, I'd like to announce that a quorum is present. The meeting is duly called, and notice of the meeting has been posted in accordance with the Texas Open Meetings Act. The time is 6 p.m. We ask that all those in attendance conduct themselves respectfully at all times during this meeting. Any outbursts or disruptive behaviors may result in your removal from this evening's board work session. The following board members are in attendance: Tracy Miller, Allison Lasan, Catherine Sells, Dr. Buddy Bonner, Christy Hassett, Jenny Brosnick, Sheila Taylor. I'll go ahead and lead us in prayer. Heavenly Father, we thank you for an opportunity to serve our community in an influential way in meeting the needs of our students, meeting the needs of our taxpayers, meeting the needs of our community leaders, and the plethora of things that happen around schools. Strong schools make strong communities, and strong communities make strong schools. We're grateful for the generosity of our community and the Rial Foundation this evening, and the Wonder Wagon and what that's going to bring to learning in LISD and how that differentiates us from other options. We just pray this evening that as we consider the things that are before us, that we'll have wisdom, we'll ask good questions. And Father, we know there are people in our district that are going through difficult times. We just pray for them a special blessing. And we just dedicate this to you in Jesus' name. Amen. Please join us in the Texas flag, or Pledge of Allegiance and the Texas flag. Our vision statement: all of our students enjoy thriving, productive lives and a future they create. Mission statement: students, staff, and communities design and implement a learning organization that provides engaging, innovative experiences every day. LISD 4 Cornerstone Student Experience, Ms. Gall.
Great, thank you. I engage in work that directly and indirectly creates positive experiences for learners.
Thank you. In an effort to better serve the students, staff, and communities throughout LISD, those wishing to address the board through public comments are now required to register online beginning when the meeting agendas are posted, which is typically 72 hours prior to the start of the meeting. These procedures are similar to those other ISDs across in other ISDs across Texas. We appreciate those who registered online to speak tonight. I don't think we have any. We want to reiterate that pre-registration process allows for people to not only complete the form online, but the option to come to the administration building to register their comment, as well as via a phone call during the registration period. Online registration was available Friday afternoon until 1 p.m. For those who wish to speak at board meetings, those who wish to speak at a board meeting often expect a dialogue with the Board of Trustees. However, in accordance with Texas law, the board is not able to respond directly to comments or questions posed to speakers. Texas law also does not allow the board to discuss or take action on any issues presented during the public forum unless the item has already been posted for action on the meeting agendas. We do divide speakers into two groups. I won't go into that this evening as we have no speakers. So with that said, we'll start with our first information item. Mr. Colbeck.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. This first item is our monthly technology report. Normally that would be during the board meeting, but I'm going to be at the COSN conference on March 20th, so I requested that I include it in the work session. So the monthly technology report this month is for the month of December. It's in board book. As you'll see, we have about 18% remaining of the 2017 technology bond funds. Our I-fee revenues have gone up, and so have our expenses, so we're still staying around that $2.5 million balance. And as you would expect, one more month goes by. Our age of our devices have gone up another month. I will note that, excuse me, in grades 4 through 12, you'll see we're nearing that average of 4 years old. That number will go down once we receive the iPads that we ordered for next year, which is a good thing. On our usage, our opt-in number dropped a little bit. I'm assuming some of that is from some transiency as the semester changes, but it's still over 95%. Devices on campus continue to stay around 87%, and our average bandwidth per student dropped a little bit as well, which I would expect for December as the semester ends and testing kind of wraps up, especially at the secondary. Again, I want to touch on, I mentioned this last month, but when you look at our percentage of usage, it's showing 44% for education, but I do believe the green-colored part of the bar or pie chart, dynamic safe listed sites, is essentially content management sites where we know we have content that students are accessing, for example, through direct links like in Canvas or Edgenuity. So if you add those two up, our total bandwidth usage is right around 80% in what I would call education category. So that's a positive, and from that perspective, I think the technology is being used for the education purpose, and you'll see below it's being used at home as well as in school.
Any questions? All right, next item, Mr. Kolbeck, ERP.
All right, thank you. I asked Mr. Kuntz to come up here as well, and I think they're queuing up a presentation. While they're setting up, I just want to give you a little background. So currently our ERP, which is Enterprise Resource Planning System, is Tyler Munis. So Munis was first implemented in 2014. So what does an ERP system do? An ERP system is basically used to run the operations of the district. So if you can imagine, we use it for budgeting, accounting, payroll, accounts payable. It's our primary human resource management system. We use it for state reporting as well. PEMS would use it as well. And over the years, I think the board has heard some feedback that we've struggled a little bit on the functionality, capabilities, and support with Tyler Munis. So what we ended up doing, Dr. Miller, David, Christy Paulson on David's team, and myself met with all of our different functional teams. So we met with finance, we met with human resources, PEMS, student services, and we discussed some of, I would say, some of the pain points of what we're currently experiencing. And out of that, there's a recommendation to evaluate different ERP systems. So let me jump into the presentation. We are planning to issue an RFP for a new ERP system this fall. That is not what this is about. So I want to clarify, they're really two different things. What preemptively anticipating that RFP, we find that it's important for us to invest in documenting our current processes, documenting our current pain points. We really need, I would say business analyst type work to look at how are we doing business, and then ideally, based upon going through that needs assessment, when we start actually looking at ERP systems, we want to best align the best system to what our needs are. So we see this pre-work as being very, very important. What we'd be looking for is a company that has experience doing this work with other school districts. Obviously, we want to have Texas-specific experience, K-12 specific experience. And I want to point out, too, one of the challenges that we're currently facing to take on a project like that internally, when Munis was implemented back in 2014, we had 5 people on our ERP team. We have 2.5. So the pre-work to even doing a project like this is pretty involved. So what would that actually look like? As I mentioned, we want to analyze our current processes, and that would happen within each functional team, because obviously there's very different processes in payroll, accounts receivable, budgeting, et cetera. And then what we would do is take a lot of that feedback and actually use it in the RFP development of the actual ERP system itself, okay? So hopefully in that process, if we were able to secure services for this, that group would be bringing subject matter experts around payroll, around budgeting, specific to the different departments that this application serves. And ultimately, we need to, temporarily expand our capacity as a technology staff to do that launch. So this is essentially an RFP for those services, okay? So our timeline today is March 6th. You're hearing about this for the first time, but we are working with procurement and contracts to issue an RFP. In fact, we had a meeting about it today. It could be released as early as the end of this week, ideally, so we can get it out before spring break. Ultimately, that would take us out to late March, where we'd be evaluating responses. We'd give the board another update at the April 17th board meeting, and if we can stay to the timeline, bring a consent item in May. And ultimately, the goal would be to start engaging with that selected vendor in June. I think that's ideal because, for one, if we end up selecting a vendor for this, it's going to take them some time to actually get their people scheduled and start working our timeline. With our ultimate goal would be having whoever would be selected for this starting to work in our different departments, set up the different meetings, have the interviews with the different folks, start mapping business processes sometime in like August, September, okay? And then I think I want to touch on, Ms. Prosnick asked a question earlier today, have we ever, correct me if I'm not stating this correctly, but I think it was in the vein of, have we ever used this approach before? And if so, how did it work? And my answer to that is we really haven't. What I mean by that is we haven't necessarily secured services to help guide us through this process end to end. We have secured consulting services to evaluate our processes. In fact, we've done it actually with Tyler, who makes Munis. They have something called a business investment analysis. We worked with another company called PSST Group a few years back, where we were analyzing how we're using the system. But as far as bringing the two together, this would be kind of new territory. But, kind of seeing the need to evaluate systems, we started trying to find out who's doing this. So we talked to a peer district who's in the midst of this right now and are using these types of services. And I think one of the best nuggets that we got out of that conversation was they wish they would have did it at the front end versus picking an ERP system. So I guess what I want to leave with you is that a system like your ERP system or your student information system, they're such massive systems. The cost on it is not necessarily what you are going to spend on the software itself. There are unbelievable amounts of soft cost when you look at managing change, documentation, processing, and when you make a decision, you want to be able to invest in that for many, many years. It's not something where you get 3-4 years down the line, it's like, man, we missed the mark on this. It's pretty high stakes in that you do not want to have a redo for an application like that. So what we see is this is essentially to be an upfront of an investment to try to make sure that we're bringing the best recommendation forward for a long-term ERP solution for the district. And that's all I have on this topic.
Any questions?
I just want to follow up and say thank you for answering my questions, because it kind of confirmed what I thought I was reading more than anything else, and that, as I always say, it might be more flashy to come in on a white horse at the end to try to fix something. I greatly appreciate doing it on the front end so that we don't need the white horse on the back end. So thank you.
Thank you.
And I want to second what Ms. Prosnick just said, and I'm so glad she asked that question, because historically, 2 iterations of this back, we had 4 program managers during the implementation, and it wasn't a success. That product lasted less than 3 or 4 years. And so I'm hopeful that whatever company that is selected for this wants to come into the district as a full and meaningful partner and works with us on documenting our processes and ensuring that we challenge those processes to make sure that best business practice is implemented alongside this software so that we reap the benefits of that. And I'm also interested, maybe at a later date, about hearing the merge between the ERP and the student information system as well, because that's heavy on my mind. So thank you all very much.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for the questions, and Ms. Prosnick, I think it's a great question, and I would just offer this. There was an era where most corporations were moving to ERP systems, and one of the things that happened was those that did not do this failed. They did not bring in someone on the front end to anticipate what the future state looks like. Here's your current state. here's your future state. So what happened is those that made the mistake would take the current state, implement a set of systems. You've got a separate payroll, you got separate this, right? And then they would have to try and put them together later. It's much more difficult to do that. So I think this is a prudent approach. And in the Constitution, words are used like a system of efficient free public schools. One of the things that's happened over time is that school districts are required to go out and piecemeal this and piecemeal that because of budgets. And this is essential to a district becoming efficient, as complex as the information requirements are about students, about staff, about payroll, that type of thing. So I think this is the right direction for us.
Okay.
And ultimately, I hope, because I won't be in that decision, the board approves doing this and moving forward in getting this done. We have talked about this for several years. It came up in our audit, I believe, in our PEAMS audit, and we struggled with getting access to data in some cases. So this is a real opportunity for us to seize the moment and create some efficiency. And I think you had on your second slide actually some benefit savings, correct? So when you look
Potential.
yeah. So when you look at this, there's an ROI around headcount. That generally speaking, the ROI for these comes around headcount, right? In an age of automation. So thank you for that, and thank you for putting this in front of us at this time.
You're welcome. Thank you.
All right. I think Facilities Service Audit Committee, Ms. Prosnick. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. I'd like to bring up the staff from McConnell and Jones. Where are they? Oh, there they are. This is the audit that was conducted in the fall, and they are here to report out on the facilities. One of the audits, along with transportation, that the board approved for this calendar year. And I will turn it over to Ms. Darlene.
Perfect. Thank you. Good evening. My name is Darlene Brown, and I'm the partner of our Enterprise Risk Services line for McConnell Jones. To my immediate right, I have Liz Byers. She's our Director of Information Technology Risk Advisory Services, and then Leslie Huff is next to her, and she is our Senior Audit Manager. The three of us worked on this audit in conjunction with some of our staff. The objective of this audit was to assess the efficiency and effectiveness of LISD's facility services, while at the same time determining compliance with local, state, and federal laws. The scope period was 2018 through 2022. I think Mr. Kennedy can attest to the amount of documentation that we looked at. It was quite extensive. Sorry for all the staff and their time to pull it together. But after looking at all that documentation and performing our audit testing and benchmarking practices, we concluded that the internal controls were effective with some best practices processes. We did have one finding that was related to pest control, and we'll discuss that later. We were asked to look at 11 different focus areas, and I'm going to provide a quick summary of each one of those 11 areas. The first one was compliance with applicable laws, regulations, contracts, and policies. We have determined that internal controls are generally effective, and we had one opportunity for improvement. So this is a good time to discuss what is a finding versus an opportunity for improvement. A finding is if we determine that there's a weakness with internal controls that could potentially lead to something wrong going on, or it's a non-compliance with a regulation or a policy. Everything else means that there are controls and processes in place, but there's an opportunity to enhance those. So we did have one opportunity for improvement in that, and this is what we would call an unfunded mandate, and it has to do with the recycling program. The district does have a recycling program in place, but part of the unfunded mandate is that you're supposed to have a incentive program for staff, and that's not in place because of budgetary constraints, and it is an unfunded mandate. So therefore, we just have that as an opportunity for improvement because the program is, overall recycling program is in place. Policies and procedures to safeguard district assets that support facilities functions. We rated internal controls as generally effective, and we had one opportunity for improvement there, and that is during the next cycle as when you're updating your policies, there's just a couple of other little items that should be included in them as standard. And then the third area was reliability and integrity of financial and operational information produced. We rated internal controls as generally effective, and we had no findings or opportunities in this area. The fourth was the Facilities Services Master Plan. Well, there's not a document that's called Facilities Master Plan. We have all of the components, and they're in very good detail. So we related the internal controls as generally effective, and we had no recommendations or opportunities there. The fifth area was facilities inventory, which included the campus location, name and number, student capacity, square and enrollment versus square footage. We had generally effective internal controls and no opportunities for improvement there. The sixth area was condition assessment reports. Again, generally effective internal controls with no findings or opportunities, and we did note some best practices in this area. The effectiveness and overall management of facility services, which includes the structure, the planning, and the performance accountability. We have internal controls as generally effective and noted some best practices in this area also. And so we have no recommendations or opportunities. The eighth area is facilities use and management processes, which includes the planning, the program needs, the type and age and configuration of your campuses. We have internal controls as generally effective, and we noticed some best practices in this area also, and we have no recommendations or opportunities. So the ninth area was maintenance processes, and that included the effectiveness and performance accountability in the maintenance function, and with your skilled trades, and that includes making sure that they're receiving the training that they need. We also reviewed the certifications to make sure that they were on file, and so we had internal controls as generally effective, and we have no recommendations or opportunities in this area. The 10th one was energy utilization, conservation, and management. We have internal controls are generally effective, and we noted some best practices. We have no recommendations or opportunities in this area. And the last item was related to groundworks. Their expenditures, their schedule, the pest control application. We have one finding in this area, and so we rated that as some improvement needed, and we'll talk about what the finding is here in a second. So there's a pattern here, right? Generally effective across the board, one finding with one recommendation and just 2 opportunities for improvement and several best practices. So that means your facilities department is functioning top-notch. We did some benchmarking and benchmarked against 18 best practices, and your district met every one of those best practices on top of the others that we found through just regular operations. Facility Services does a great job at managing their budget despite raising costs of labor and supplies. And they have not gone over budget. When we analyzed the work orders, 29,863 work orders were received by the Facilities Department between November of 2021 and November 31st of 2022. That's a lot of work orders. Of those, 20,840 were for non-preventative. So we further dug into those non-preventative work orders to see what the impact is on the staff and on just the ability to meet the goals. The facility service team has laid goals for the time to turn around those work orders that are rated as critical. Their goal is 9 days. High, their goal is 9 days, medium, 13 days, and low was 32 days. That's their goal, to be able to do the work and close out that work order. And this is across 81 facilities. We know that 20% of the work orders were submitted by 5 campuses. The first one being Colony High School with 841, Flower Mound with 754, LHS Maine with 747, and Marcus High with 728, and then Hebron High of 705. So when we further dug down into the ratings of that are being self-assigned between critical, high, and medium and low, we determined that most of those critical self-assigned were not really critical. It's a way to take priorities. So there needs to be some understanding with campus staff that what critical really means, and placing critical doesn't mean that you're going to get it addressed any sooner. So when it comes to energy, this was pretty shocking. The district has a 76% increase in the rates that they paid between 2018-19 school year and now. Although the cost has gone up, you're still able to have a very effective energy management program, and you're even winning some awards. So overall, another area you're managing your funds quite nicely. The last thing I'm going to talk about is the ground services. There is periodic audits performed by the pest control coordinator, and those audits reveal that numerous campus employees still use their own pesticide solutions and submit work orders as critical for quick turnaround time. What this suggests is that staff education about integrated pest management needs to be enhanced, and policies need to be enforced, because staff should not be using their own pesticides. There's just too much risk there. While facility staff notify the appropriate leadership of the violations, the enforcement and the disciplining of those violations reside at the campus level. So this concludes my summary of our facility service audit. We wish to thank everybody for their candidness and openness, and we wish to thank the board and administration for all of your help and your opportunity to serve you. So if you have any questions, we'd be happy to answer them.
Jane, any?
No, I'm on the committee. We don't have any.
No,
don't
I
have any
didn't know if you got
questions.
into
The only thing I would like to say is, Mr. Hughes, would you like to recognize any of the staff that are here? Appreciate their participation in the report.
Yes, I would. So I do have Ginger Cashman here in the back. She is the administrative assistant to myself, and Stephen Jones, the director, who are my two right hands in performing all this work. So, and of course, all the rest of my staff, all of the maintenance gentlemen and ladies that come to work every day and do all of this hard work across the district. Certainly want to recognize them.
Thank you both very much.
Who's on the audit committee now?
The
three of
audit
you?
committee is Ms. Lasan and Dr. Bonner and myself.
Do we have another report coming?
Yes, we will have a transportation report. McConnell Jones is also doing that, hoping for April. Or no, we moved it to June.
Yeah, we moved it to June
because of spring break and some other things.
Okay. So thank you for this. Appreciate you guys doing this. Make sure you give OD my best. This is the second audit you've done for us, and I think we've got one more. As a reminder, we went into this a few years ago. The board started, as you guys may remember, I don't know how many of you were on that call when we did our RFP, but we audited ourselves first. And and we audited HR, and we audited PEAMS, and a number of areas. I think, this is the time of year, there's a lot of bravado around ISDs and the way they spend money. And I think this is an example of facilities, which outside of compensation, which we'll talk about a little bit, is one of our larger expenses. And so it's great to get an independent validation of what we already thought about our facilities committee and the way they were doing things. I will tell you that I never even thought pest control would be a topic on facilities, but find it intriguing, and it actually makes sense now. But thank you for that. I won't be here I'll come to the meeting in June when you guys present, but I know you guys will do a great job. Did you have anything you wanted to add? Oh, Ms. Taylor, you got a question? Okay, Charlotte, you speak up, Sheila.
Okay, I'm doing the best I can with my voice, okay? First of all, kudos to our facilities management and maintenance department. What a fabulous job managing our resources. My question is probably stemming from being the newest board member. I saw that the audit scope was 2018 through 2022. Did we have an audit performed prior to that time? If so, were you the auditors? If not, were you privy to the report and the work papers? I just want to know how we did, if there was, something trending over time, or did we get better over time, if that makes sense?
So I don't believe that there was a full scope audit like this prior to our audit. Part of the processes that we go through is we do ask for copies of any prior studies or reports, and there weren't
There were
any.
none, okay.
And the reason we went 2018 to 2022 is it doesn't provide a whole lot more value to you if we go back further, but it increases your costs significantly. And although the period was 2018 to 2022, we did look at processes as of this past fall when we were on the ground doing the work.
Okay, sounds good. And then my next question, I guess, or comment might be to Dr. Rapp, just regarding the finding on the pesticide. I guess I'm assuming there's a plan in place to address a tightening of our policies and
Can I actually speak to that?
Yeah, absolutely.
So the pest control issue that our IPM coordinator has found, as she mentioned, out in the district, where we'll find staff that are actually using pest control products themselves to treat issues. He brought that to our attention. We actually created a presentation to be included with the annual compliance training. We actually submitted that back in September, so it's actually in the works already. And so you'll see that, all the staff will see that in their next annual compliance. And we'll, I think, keep them a lot more educated in what they can and cannot do according to the law.
Thank you, Jason. And obviously, as we have findings, we always will work with Ms. Litchfield to follow up with the principals about the findings from this audit in order to reinforce important learning as we go into the rest of the school year.
Hesse?
Ms. Taylor, I think one thing that I could say that we've always had a great deal of processes evolve with facilities, but I think it's the work of Mr. Hughes' administration, his office, that have really tightened up and provided a lot of the processes we have now in place. So even if we had one before, I don't think it would have been apples to apples. So I think they've done a great job.
Yeah, and I think to Ms. Taylor's point, we did not, actually this idea came from going to TASB and listening to sessions on best practices for school boards on, working within this constitutional model of efficient system of efficient free public schools. And so we came back with that idea. We then took and created a priority list. The board met individually with an audit firm that we hired. We came up with a list of 10. I don't know what we have after this.
Gibson provided us with a critical needs, and he ranked all of the functions within the district. And it is through those ratings that we have chosen what areas to audit. And so that's why you have facilities and transportation. The committee will come back in April with a recommendation for the board's approval for next year.
So we're not done with the 10. Again, they've got one more, but we've got more out of the 10. How many more do we have? Two or three?
If we did everything, I think we have four. We have 4 areas left. It does not mean that we will audit those.
Yeah.
We may not choose to audit those 4 areas, but we do have 4 areas that have not been had an external audit done.
Yeah. Great.
And there'll be more on that later.
All right. Hey, thank you all very much. Tell OD we said hello. Thank you. Okay, learning and teaching, Ms. Call.
All right, great. Thank you so much. I'd like to bring up Dr. Jonas Green, who's our Digital Learning Director, Kim War, who is our Elementary STEM Administrator, and Lori Klimick, who is our STEM Learning Facilitator and also the fantastic driver of our brand new Wonder Wagon. Thank you all so much for your support. They're going to share some information with you about how this operates and what experiences our students get to have when it visits their campus.
Good evening, Board and Dr. Rapp. I want to thank those of you that were able to come to our ribbon cutting tonight to officially launch the start of our Wonder Wagon program. This really has been a testament of one LISD. Every single division of this school district has come together for the launch of this program, but not just our school district, but it's been community partners, teachers and parents and businesses coming together to make this program a success. So a big thank you to them and to you for your support in this program. This program ensures that science, math, engineering, and emerging technologies are superior at every single elementary school. Not just at some elementary schools, but at every single one of them. And so new emerging technologies will be rolling out to campuses that involve computer coding, robotics, 3D printing. And so I'm excited to introduce you to members of our digital learning team here that are in charge of the success of this program, to share a little bit about the impact that it's already having and that it will continue to have here in our district.
Okay, as I was introduced as, my name is Lori Klimek. The kids call me Wonder K. And I am the elementary STEM facilitator at Wonder Wagon. And we have some examples of sharing the technology learning that is happening through the Wonder Wagon lessons. Right now, this year, it's kinder and third grade students. The kinders will use KinderBots to learn coding, the building of primary blueprints, and then third grade also does some design mazes with robots to navigate, as well as plan and create new gadgets that show mechanical energy. And this is a video that we're going to show you, and I think it says a bazillion words. As you can see, the high engagement, the smiles, the collaboration, the positive energy, and that's what makes this successful.
Did you make
and our volunteers.
Really working? Yep.
And that says a lot.
Hi, I'm Kim Moore. Oh, I think it's going to go. Oh, there we go.
There.
The Wonder Wagon's purpose is to serve select elementary schools throughout the district without consistent STEM education on campus every day, each week. This endeavor supports the mission of all of our students getting a chance to use and create technology that is a way for them to experience creativity, problem solving, critical thinking, communication, and collaboration, all done through the engineering design process. The experiences are designed based on the learning standards in science, math, engineering, and tech. For each grade level, technology is prevalent in each lesson, whether it be a new design to solve a problem or building and coding a robot. So here are two specific examples of students engaged in that learning. We have 14 schools that we currently serve. A few quotes from the students and teachers are up on the screen, but overall we have reached over 100 teachers, 950 kindergarten students, and 1,050 third grade students just since January. So that is a huge impact, and we couldn't have done it without the like Dr. Green said, the collaboration with so many people in and around our district. So the infusion of technology and STEM in our schools would not be possible without the support of these people. A special thank you to the Rao Foundation, and then of course we have a list of countless others on our screen. Thank you for your time this evening.
I just want to say you are the absolute perfect person to be running the wagon. I think you were born to do this. And I am slightly suspicious that Simon looks a lot like Dr. Green. But thank you all. I'm excited to see it around. I do actually have one question, which is currently we're serving the 14. That's obviously a lot less than the 35 campuses that are not STEM campuses. So what is there a plan to expand?
So,
are we looking for another foundation for another Wonder Wagon?
So the Wonder Wagon is part of our program to meet all 40 schools. So we have the 5 STEM Academy programs. We also have STEM Specials. That's the Specials Rotation STEM program. And so this Wonder Wagon is serving those campuses that aren't STEM Academy and don't have STEM Specials. So it's getting the rest of those campuses with those same learning experiences.
So thank you so much. It was so exciting to see that out there today, and I have to agree with you, Ms. Prosnick. You are perfect for that role. So my question is just more, I'm just curious. So you roll onto a campus. I'm assuming you, could you just explain, what a day looks like? How long do you stay with a class? Do you have, all the classes in one day? How does that work?
Right. Right now on the campuses, if they're a small campus, that means that they have 4 sections or less of kinder and 3rd grade. Then I spend the full day there. Kinder gets an hour of time with me, and 3rd grade gets an hour and a half of time with me. And they go, right now we're doing stations, so they are doing stations. They watch a video prior to that, also a student expectation video, so we're doing a little flipped learning. So they come to me already knowing what the expectation is, so they can start right on with all the hands-on experiences. And then the larger campuses, we split into 2 days. And so I'll spend one day at 3rd grade and one day at kindergarten.
And right now we're doing that full rotation every 9 weeks.
I was just wondering if we have a plan to put this out in the community. I can think of a couple of community events, a couple of homecoming parades that I think that it would behoove us to include this so that we can start showing our community who maybe doesn't have that hands-on what we're doing. And like Mr. Miller said there at the grand opening, this is a part of school choice for LISD that we venture to say that many do not have. And so just wanting to make sure that we're sharing this excitement with those that don't necessarily benefit from it rolling up onto your campus.
Yeah, we do see this as a great marketing tool. We do a lot of marketing in our department already with the STEM Academy program, and so this just adds on to that marketing of the great things in our district. And we do want to, as you know, we just saw the truck tonight for the first time, so as we get the wheels on the ground more, we want to do more community events with it.
I greatly appreciate all the effort that everyone has put in, because this is amazing that we can provide STEM to all of our students within the district. Really, really appreciate that. Are we going to stick with 3rd and kinder?
Actually, next year we'll be rolling up to 2nd as well. So we will reach kinder, 2nd, and 3rd each 9 weeks at all of those schools, and possibly other schools depending on how scheduling changes for next year.
So just the strategic part of that is that 1st grade and 4th grade do the Liz Dola trip. And so we strategically picked grade levels that don't get that Liz Dola trip, where they have some infused STEM experiences when they go out to Liz Dola.
Okay. And I also wanted to remark that, Dr. Green, it seems like you bring us the best toys when we have meetings, so really appreciate that.
My job is very fun.
Well, appreciate what you guys are doing with this, and of course, grateful for the Rao Foundation and, the stories we heard tonight. To reiterate, these are options you do not see outside of ISDs in any other form of school choice, and I think we need to remember that. Also need to remember there's a false narrative that it's just as simple as the basics. Go talk to employers today. Why is it that IBM spends so much money on their STEM programs, in particular around, AT&T, in particular around women in STEM programs? We know that there's a decline of women enrolling in STEM programs at the collegiate level, at least American students, right? Non-immigrant students. And so this is an opportunity for us, and I'm speaking as a computer science major, for us to allow students to use their brains differently. It's easier to go backwards than it is to come out and say, I don't know anything about STEM, and now I'm going to try and get a job in STEM. What this does to the brain and the learning is essential for what's going on. And I think this level of creativity is phenomenal. And I think, as I tried to say out there, without saying the four cornerstones, it really meets our four cornerstones. And we have probably one of our more energetic principals managing this mobile campus. So thank you for that. And really excited about what you guys are going to do. And, honestly, I think the board should think about long-term, right? How do we expand these learning opportunities, whether they're summer mobile units for summer programs or for other things, that these are alternative forms of delivery of education that are really important. And so thank you for this. Very excited to see what's going to happen with this. So appreciate y'all.
And in regards to that, I would say this board has done an extensive amount of resource allocation to the elementary level with STEM, and research shows that students decide what they want to be when they grow up as early as second grade. And so the investment you have put towards STEM education at the elementary level in this district is helping with that very issue. So.
Yeah, and I'm reminded of one of the things that was said last week in one of the presentations, or last meeting. We learn to read up to third grade. From third grade on, we read to learn. And so that kind of transition of second to third grade and what happens is essential. And so I know you guys have all that kind of integrated together with all the different parts, but thank you for that. Thank you for the good work on this. Excited to see what happens. Hopefully we get more. Thank you. Okay, Chief of Staff Dr. Miller, long-range plan update.
All right, good evening, y'all. So we are coming each month to share an update on progress we're making as we develop our long-range plan. So if you recall, last month we talked about how we're aligning the structure and our language of the plan with the DIP to make that all make sense. So this month we're really exploring and discussing how do we use this plan to really help us prioritize and narrow down our focus. As y'all know, we are really good at adding more things to the plate and more things and never taking anything off. And so we are looking at how to use this plan to possibly what are things that we could take off the plate that aren't helping us get to our goals. So I wanted to share just a couple of examples. This is a resource stewardship example. We have gotten lots of feedback from different groups about workload, how that's impact paperwork, how that's impacting staff. And so this is an example of one of our performance tasks that we would have over 3 years. Some strategies. Now remember, the strategies could possibly change because as new resources come out, as things come up, the actual task you do to achieve it might change, but that performance objective is what we will bring to you in April. And then we included some measurements of how we would know what are the indicators, evidence that we're looking for to know that we are making progress in that goal. So that is an example for resource stewardship. And then one thing about advisory periods, we know that there are mandatory things out there, and then there are other things that campuses might need. And so really looking at how are we using that to the benefit of what we're wanting the result to be. So, and we even have some strategies of possibly 2 years down the road. Of course, those could change as well. But just to give you an idea, and then again, what are those measurements that we are using over time? Remember, the plan will be 3 years, and so what does that look like over time to make sure that we're meeting them? So those are 2 examples of how we're trying to use the plan to align things and then really prioritize our focus and get down to what is it we're wanting to make an impact on, and then how are we considering all the other stuff that might be weighing people down. And then next month, in April, we will come at the workshop when we talk about the superintendent goals. We'll bring the draft to you for any feedback, and then we'll bring the plan for approval at the board meeting in April.
Real quickly, Dr. Miller, could you just go back to the slide on the resource stewardship? I just want to point something out. You know, look at that measured results impact just as an example there under resource stewardship. Decrease implementation of new commitments over 3 years. There's never been a more important time to develop a long-range plan that recognizes that more and more has been placed on the plates of our teachers. Sometimes not all by our choice, but the importance of recognizing that we understand there's a lot we've been asked to do, all good things, but it's time to take a hard look both locally and at what's on our plate with the state and see how can we adjust things in order to balance the workload for staff. And I just think that what they've come up with there sets a nice example when the legislature is meeting right now. A goal about decreasing an implementation of new commitments could be a welcome model for many others to look at achieving.
Well, I wasn't going to say anything, but you kind of piqued my curiosity there with the idea of strategic abandonment. You know, no one ever does that, ever. And so I want to hear more about that and more of what you guys move off the plate of teachers and administrators, for that matter, because it is critical to do. There are things that we do in a bureaucracy that we just do because we've always done them. And sometimes it's kind of fun just to not do them to see who catches it. So I would challenge you and hope to hear more on that. Thank you.
I just want to say that, you know, normally when you think about stewardship, you're talking about money or resources, mostly money. So I like the idea that we are really focusing on our true resources as our teachers. So I just want to commend you for that. And I know we hear it in the community all the time that our teachers are having a tough time and they have all these requirements and all this extra stuff on their plate before they even get to the job that they love, which is teaching. So I just want to commend us and commend everyone for making sure that this is a part of our long-range stewardship goal to make sure we take care of one of our most important resources.
Just so Ms. Maloney doesn't, we do also have something about our finances too.
You know,
we'll focus on that too.
I do have a question. Where is this going to live? I know we're going to incorporate it in the DIP, but the leadership, the stewardship goals and the performance objectives, where is it going to live?
So the goals are part of your plan, the long-range plan, and then the performance objectives live in your DIP along with the strategies.
Okay. So we're not really going to include the performance objectives in the long-range plan?
Yes. The goal is what was established by the committee.
Right.
The performance objectives will be in the plan. So that's what we will be sharing with you as part of the plan. So actually the plan will have the vision, mission, your beliefs, then your goals for the cornerstones, and then the performance objectives of how we will get to those goals over the 3 years. So then the performance objectives and the strategies will go in your DIP to monitor that each year.
Right. Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yep. Makes sense. Thank you.
Along with the measurements go in your DIP as well.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
Uh-huh.
Thank you, Shauna. Just as a reminder, this is a result of our audit again. one of the things that came out was that we do a strategic plan, or as we're calling it, a long-range plan. And I agree with Dr. Bonner. You know, I think it would be interesting in some cases for us not to do things and see what happens. Now, we actually, without going into details, did some of that this year, and nothing happened. But as Dr. Rapp continuously reminds us, is that the currency of teachers is time. And as a reminder, there are a lot of men and women meeting in Austin right now that can make the decision to change the way that the things that are burdening teachers. It is their responsibility. The Constitution says, it shall be the duty of the legislature. And so this is their time to act and give us that time back, along with the basic allotment, which I'm sure Ms. Maloney will talk about here in a second. But just want to reiterate that. So thank you for putting this together, and looking forward to this being a living document. Thank you. Ms. Maloney.
Thank you so much, President Miller, Dr. Rapp, and members of the board. We're pulling up a presentation for, we wanted to give you an update on our fiscal year 23. That's this school year budget forecast. It's very early. This is numbers through February. But what we're going to do this evening is provide an update on the 22-23 general operating budget and some February projections for revenue, through February projections for revenue, and through February projections for expenditures. An old friend of mine used to use this in his budget presentation every single time, and I think it's good to think about this, that a financial projection or your budget is at a point in time. It includes many assumptions and variables that we will talk about tonight, the things that we have to contend with to determine. During the budget cycle, assumptions and variables are analyzed through forecasting, and it's important to note that a school district budget is not an exact science of knowing exactly how much revenue you're going to bring in the school year, or exactly how much you're going to spend during the school year. So I always think about him when I get ready for budget time. I think it's important for us to look back at fiscal year 22. This was a slide that we showed many, many times, but this is our adopted budget to our actual budget. We started out with that $26 million deficit, and then applied a $7 million offset through ESSER, and ended right at $20 million. And while that looks like, we came in about where we said we were going to be, I do think that we have to break this down a little bit and look at, we did have a pretty significant revenue shortfall in fiscal year 22 of $34 million, and we had expenditure savings of almost $40 million. So as we go through some of these things tonight and break down revenue and break down expenditures, what we're really attempting to do is come in closer on where we're going to be on revenue budget to actual, and where we're going to be on expenditures budget to actual. So those are some of the things that we'll be talking about this evening. So we'll go back and talk about our enrollment projections. We projected at 49,183, and as of today we are 48,537. On snapshot is the number that you see there in the middle. And for estimated ADA, which that's how we get our funding, our attendance, we estimated at 46,233. And after the fourth 6 weeks through February, we're at 45,567. And yes, if you subtract those two numbers, you're going to get 666. And I did not realize that. I would have probably changed a number just to change it. But yeah, and we noticed that this morning, and I was like, oh gosh. But anyway, M&O tax rate, required MCR at 8059, adding those 5 golden pennies that we've talked about at length. For our M&O tax rate that we don't really have discretion on setting. The state does that for us through the Texas Education Agency. Wanted to talk a little bit when we talk about those assumptions and those variables that change all of the time, and bear with me here, but I want to talk about taxable values and the things that we have to look at over time. We start out, remember last summer we had to turn in to TEA our net taxable value on an estimate that we had. And they want you to turn that net taxable value in because that's going to come in closer to the market value that the comptroller is going to use. So we turned in to TEA in July of 2022 $52 billion for a taxable value. Then for our T2 value that we used in our budget, it was later on in the month, late August 2022, we adopted, it was a little bit lower, already coming in a little bit lower. We used $52.9 billion for our adopted budget. And then we knew, since we got that certified estimate, that we needed to follow up on that to certify to TEA, and we got Brandon Purdue to help us, and they were able to reduce our to certify to TEA by almost $1 billion, and that helps us in the formula because if you have a lower number, that decreases your local share and then decreases your recapture. But when we talk about collections, for the levy, you have to assume anything that's under protest, anything that's going to get an exemption, all of those different things. So since we got a certified estimate, we used the number $48.7 billion, and then when we got certified values in October, it was in fact lower. And so our budgeted tax collections were at $461 million, and I'm thinking we're probably going to come in at about 99% of the levy at $447. And a real hard lesson that I'm going to learn here is I'm going to budget at every single protest is going to get. That's just the way I'm going to do it next year. That we have to do it that way so we can be sure, and maybe we'll be happy that some of them won't be, but we're coming in about 13 million short on property values where I think we are today. Again, our enrollment is down from what we used to budget, and subsequently our ADA is down as well. And as you know, ADA decrease corresponds with that enrollment decline. Another bit of information, and I'm sure that Dr. Rapp will speak about this in a little bit as well, and Ms. Smith in her presentation, we budgeted at an assumed fill rate of staffing at 94%. Our current staff fill rate is at 95 to 96%, and our teacher fill rate is at 97%. So you're going to see on our expenditures that we're going to have very little savings on the payroll budget, and we're used to having about $10 million in savings. So you're going to see that in the line item as we take you through that. So let's break down. This is our local revenue. This is our taxes and anything that we collect locally. And I've already spoken about that $13 million where I think that we're going to come in short. Our tuition and fees is down about 15% on a projection, but we'll be updating you as we go along. Amber and her team have done a great job on the investments. I am hopeful that will even come in a little bit higher through some of the work that we've done. The pools are working really good for us, and then we have invested in some T-bills and laddered some things out, especially for our recapture payment that is not due until August. And then rent, and then all the way down, and you see that other local revenue. We did get a windfall check on the hailstorm from years ago, and so that came in at almost $2 million, so that's going to be very, very helpful. Again, this is preliminary. It's February, but wanted you to see the local revenue there. Other things in other revenue is your fees, your e-commerce share, and then that insurance recovery. On the state revenue, the available school fund is that per capita that's based on the prior year. So we don't have that number really at budget time. We have to base it on what we think it's going to be of what's left over for them to budget. And then we get settle up in September, and so that came in a little higher, thank goodness. And then our foundation school program, any money that we get from the foundation school program is going to be from those golden pennies, because we still collect state revenue on those because our taxes don't exceed what that guaranteed yield is. We've collected a little revenue on taxable value audits. We are going to submit another one for 21, and 22, and we're hopeful that we'll know some things in the next month that will come up as well. A story this evening is TRS on behalf. We are not going to receive as much revenue as we budgeted, but that's a match to what we're spending on the expenditure side. So we'll have savings on the expenditure side in the same amount because it's an in and an out. So really the big story on the state revenue shortfall is TRS on behalf, which is not really a story because you're only going to get what you spend. On the federal revenue and the general operating fund, and I should have prefaced we're only talking about the general operating fund tonight. We have a debt service presentation a little bit later. That TEA federal revenue is going to be your indirect costs on your federal programs. We have, since last year, we've incorporated child nutrition into that indirect cost, and then those will be our ESSER funds as well. Then that's our SHARs. We're exploring why our impact aid is a little bit down. But get back to you on that. But then our total revenue is right there, and we're coming in about where we thought we were going to come in. And so here is a snapshot of our adopted budget for revenue versus our projected revenue. And one thing that I'd like to say, you've been hearing a lot about the property tax relief bills and things like that. If we just get a property tax relief bill and no infusion of the basic allotment or anything to help us in the student entitlement side, what you'll see on a budget like ours is that our local revenue will go down, our state revenue will go up. On the expenditures, the recapture payment, of course, will go down. But if the entitlement remains the same, we won't get any more per student. And so I think that we have to always think a property tax bill has to also include a component on the school finance side to increase the entitlement for our students that we serve. And I wanted to do a little prior year comparison just to, when I beat myself up over the local revenue being down, the taxes being that big story, it was a larger difference in the prior year, so we're coming in a little closer there. The story on the state revenue for us for this year is that TRS on behalf pretty much. State revenue was not budgeted. The ASF was not budgeted where it needed to be last year, so that it came in a little bit higher. One word of caution that I'll have on the federal side is we have to take out that revenue because we're running, we won't have that indirect cost revenue on ESSER, so that's another revenue loss that we have going into budget season for the fiscal year 24, and Dr. Epp will have to add that to one of our assumptions. We'll lose out on that revenue. So let's talk a little bit about payroll. In our initial budget projections, again, we assumed that 94% fill rate. We're coming in at 95 to 96 with the 97% for teachers. We have that on TRS on behalf booking entry that's coming in for revenue and expenses. I'll talk a little bit about that on the savings that we had. Overtime and extra duty are lower for fiscal year 23 to date. However, last summer they were very high, and so it's a very hard expense to project. And I need to talk a little bit about the August payroll accrual because it'll throw you off. Once you start looking at those 6100s every month in the financials, you'll think, oh, I could just multiply that out by 12, and you can't do that because our July and August payroll accrual and some other variables that I'll talk about on the next slide come into play in the summer. But that kind of outlines what we do with the accrual. We accrue it back from the September payroll, and usually it's between $3 and $5 million for that August payroll. A typical monthly payroll expenditure is between $33 and $34 million in the general operating fund, but July and August payroll are exceptions and are higher due to summer learning for students, new hires, extra duty and overtime, temporary workers, and that payroll accrual from September. As I have started to report out on the 6100s and your financials, I mean, that's the first thing that you'll want to do, but then you have to know that these payroll expenses are higher in the summer. For non-payroll expenses, our recapture was projected at $54.4 million, but due to decreased enrollment is now projected at $60 million, a little over. That's a $6 million increase. Historically, there have been significant savings in each non-payroll category. This particular projection that we're bringing to you today is going to assume a $6 million save across the non-payroll categories. So here we have there, you always have to combine payroll and TRS on behalf, so we're just right there in the black there. The recapture payment is the big story here, significantly higher. And then the rest are those expenditure projections in those other areas. If you compare it to, and I noticed this just a second ago, for fiscal year 22 in the bottom box, that recapture percentage, recapture should be in black. We had a huge savings in recapture due to the attendance adjustment that we got in fiscal year 22. So everything pretty much in fiscal 22 was in the black for expenditure savings, because remember I said we had about 40 million. But I would say that 12 million was in the savings in recapture, and then that 7 million in TRS on behalf. So we really had true savings that we could control, about 20 million. And so right now, if we look, if the fiscal year 23 is at the top, and then there is our update adopted to projected final for the final projected deficit. It's coming in higher. And we cannot have that conversation without having this conversation about our fund balance. Our fund balance resolution states that we must maintain 25% of expenditures in fund balance, and that's something we set on ourselves. This is important for credit ratings, calls, and bond sales. At our current expenditure projection and deficit that we're projecting, we would be over our fund balance policy by about 12.3 million. I will say that statutorily in FIRST, it requires 75 days of expenditures. So statutorily, we wouldn't be in any danger at the state level, but for our own purposes and for our ratings calls, it's a very important thing. And so some next steps that we'll be taking is that we'll be looking at our central office department budgets and take immediate action to adjust based on these current projections. We're going to work on offsetting the increase in recapture and the other variables that we discussed this evening. And I think it's important as we move forward, we had lengthy discussions about this, of how we want to plan for the 28th budget workshop. We have to reflect on our learning in the fiscal year 23 budget to guide assumptions for the 24 forecast. Of course, monitoring the legislation for state funding formula changes, and then we have to integrate those compensation conversations in planning for our budget forecast for fiscal year 24. Dr. Rapp, I'll turn it over to you.
So one of the things, well, first of all, thank you to Ms. Maloney and the team for the robust work they prepared tonight and those numbers. One of the items that I know you all wanted was for us to get closer and shrink the gap on revenue and expenditures. And when you look at those boxes with the percentages, you'll see that we have done that. And we knew when we made some budget assumptions, it was the first time to develop a budget with a percentage fill rate on personnel to get to shrink that expenditure gap. And we're thrilled at the work of Ms. Smith's team to have the fill rate that we have, but that does impact that budget assumption. So we're happy to take any questions, but I do appreciate the charge to try to narrow that gap, and we really have tried to do that. And as she said, we'll be taking that learning forward as we develop the fiscal year 24 budget.
First of all, Ms. Maloney, I need you to go find 5,000 kids and get them enrolled. I'm shocked really and maybe I just don't understand the formula for recapture that about a $5,000 less kids equals like 5 million increase in recapture? It's just
Yes.
crazy to me.
And it's that weighted average too.
Right.
It's and so you play around with some of that and it creeps up for sure.
And I know I keep saying this and sounding like a broken record, and I don't know what the answer is. Well, I know what the answer is, right? You have a budget. You can fix it by increasing revenue or decreasing expenses. I don't know where we land in trying to manage that better, but I'm a little nervous, I guess, moving forward in a district that has decreasing enrollment, that we're going into our fund balance and projected to go through it, eat through it at the rate that we're going. And maybe that's just me having a comment, because I don't really have any answers other than, like I said, going and stealing 5,000 kids or 10,000 kids and enrolling them, or I guess trying to manage expenses better. I'm concerned. And, as your accountant on the board, I'm always concerned about, about the fund balance in the budget. But great job on pulling this together, so at least we know early, going into it, what it looks like.
I'll give you a little thing that you can do. And this is one thing I always do, and I think to myself, okay, what's 100 kids going to be? I times 100 by the basic allotment, 6160, and then I know that you're going to probably have 30% on top of that, and so that's going to get you to about, as far as entitlement goes, for the whole formula. So.
Okay, so I have first of all, thank you for the work. This is depressing. But thank you I know you guys work really hard on this, and we do appreciate it. I just wanted to say this in basic forms that I'm understanding, making sure I'm understanding this right. The bar graph there at the end, the fiscal year 23 deficit, so we're looking at basically, I just want to make sure I'm understanding this right, we're looking at going below what our fund balance resolution is for this year, right? Okay. By almost 8 million, is that right?
12.
12, okay. See,
And
this is why I'm not an accountant. That's why I'm asking the basic questions. Go ahead.
Assuming this deficit and those expenditures. Now, one thing I thought about as I sat down this evening, we will get to deduct the $7 million in expenditures off because of the ESSER offset. But, that'll get you to about 141. So still you're going to be 9, assuming the same deficit.
ESSER's not, we're about done with ESSER after that, right?
Exactly.
It's done.
Yeah.
So, okay, so I guess something that I think as a board we have to think about then is, we're going to be below this. Now, granted, I realize that it's something that we, right, as a board have set, or not me, because I don't remember doing this in particularly, but we're going to be below this fund balance resolution. So to me, that's, that's pretty major when we make future decisions. I just wanted to point that out.
My comment was along the same lines. I do remember the resolution. I'm wanting to know later on, not now, but how will this impact future bonds? They do look at that 25%, which is why we put it in the resolution, and it's concerning to me. And I would like to magically find those children or the money tree, because this is depressing. Thank you for the work.
Ms. Maloney, on the slide on page 64, we were about $1 billion delta between the certified estimate and the certified value, and that drove our tax collections down about $13.8 million. Am I reading that correctly? Okay, so
Yes.
So assuming an accurate certified value this year, that helps our budget endeavors, doesn't it? At least we know.
Yes.
At that point. Am I
Absolutely.
reading that correctly?
You are. And this is conservative for right now, but I've learned to be conservative.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Well, Dr. Bonner and I are sharing the same brain tonight because I had written that exact thing down. The next thing I would say is that I think we are going to have different assumptions for the 23-24 budget. I'm hoping one of those assumptions is, I'll say, it is something that Ms. Hassett and I have talked about, and that is tax collection, and that it doesn't need to be at 100% because that really hurt us, not last year, but the year before. We can't do anything. The largest part of our budget is people. And when you go over by even 0.5% or 1%, that is what has eaten us into the budget. And so I'm grateful for the fill rate. I mean, kudos to you. You filled it. But I think that is where we also have some opportunity to, with our assumptions for next year. Cannot change what has happened this year. The budget line concerns me, and I hope when Mr. Martin comes up, we might be able to ask him if he can give us some insight onto that. But I think it shows more than anything else that we operate on it may be a large number, but it is a razor-thin budget. And that we put our money where we have our priority, and that is our people. Thank you for the work.
Thank you, Ms. Prosnick. Ms. Maloney, thank you for this. So I don't know if I have any questions, but because I can, I've got a few statements. This is my 9th budget cycle, and we're going to talk about compensation in a second. Again, it's a season of a lot of bravado. Pay teachers, fine. I've served with, Christy and I have served with at least 10 trustees plus ourselves, 11. And never in our history at this time of year has those who have said we should reduce our spending come and sat down with us and showed us where we can reduce our spending. You can reduce your spending in athletics. Okay, well, you get rid of athletics, you save $11 million. You spend $14 to $18 million on raises. You're still deficit spending. We didn't have these problems the first 4 or 5 years on the board because we weren't in recapture. Recapture is solely a function of your WADA, your student pop, and your valuations. So it's not that LISD is just losing students. The question is, why is LISD losing students? LISD is losing students because families like mine cannot afford to buy a home in LISD. And they cannot afford, because they cannot afford to pay taxes, let alone the current environment with the interest rates going up. And so this is something that it would be great for us to find these students. The legislature needs to fix this formula. Again, this is a legislative issue. Now, people can look at us and say, we need to spend our money different. My challenge is this. My call is this. Come sit down with us. Not one trustee can ever tell of a person that actually took them up on, and I'm not talking debt service, I'm talking about M&O, sat down and said, hey, in 199, you could save this amount of money. As a matter of fact, to be transparent, Dr. Rogers put together a community-based advisory committee, if I got the name right, I think that's what it was, which was a group of executives, financiers, CPAs, bank presidents, chief financial officers, to look at how we spend our money, and guess what they found? Doing a really good job. So again, in an era of a year of bravado, I offer people an opportunity to come forward and sit with any trustee, with Ms. Maloney, and show us where to save money, because we are in a difficult situation. The legislature can fix this. Now, to that point, the governor has said, hey, good news if there's school choice. I'm not going to reduce the funding per student. So you take a campus that has 600, and let's say 200 leave. You've got a facilities you still have to pay for. You can reduce the number of teachers you have, but you're going to reduce the specials. You're going to reduce a lot of things that are available to kids. And then the question is that community attractive anymore? Because they could go to Frisco and they could get, or they could go to Ponder ISD and get it. They can go to Quinlan, Texas and get it. They can't get it in LISD because we have a mindset that says we can't go into our deficit. We built those surpluses over the years for a reason, And it's unfortunate we have to go into that deficit, but remember, we are one of the only districts that did not increase the tax rate on our citizens after House Bill 3 in 2019, I believe. We did not do it. And so we sat here in a position of saying we're going to be financially responsible. And not doing so in retrospect may have been a problem for us. Because we would be looking at a different fund balance there, even with compression, we'd be looking at some different numbers. I think people need to remember that we, for the last 3 years, did not take their money. At some point, we need more money, but we have not taken their money. And then, you know, these, again, I reiterate, we had a lot of executives look at our budgets over multiple months, found nothing. Nobody's come forward and said, this is the area where you can save money. They hypothesize about it, they talk in general terms about it, but nobody provides any specifics about it. I'm opening the door. Come talk to us. Come talk to Ms. Maloney. Give us the idea. Show us. When Christy Hassett and I ran, we probably looked at 15 years of financials just to run. You can go look at anything and any way we spend money. You can go look at our check registers. By the way, try to do that in other school choice options. You can't do it, right? So I think we are challenged on a revenue perspective. We are not irresponsible, which we can't control that. We are not irresponsible on a expenditure perspective. Our next item is to talk about teacher raises. You know, last year we were very aggressive and accelerated our timeline on teachers. I can say this as I leave the board. There is no district that's been as attentive to or as aggressive about trying to compensate our teachers as we have in the last longer than Christy and I have been on the board. 1 year we gave 2%. I probably regret that one. Probably could have done better because we put money in our fund balance that year. But nevertheless, we have been very aggressive. I expect we'll be aggressive again. We'll see what the presentation is. But these are the tough decisions we have to make. And again, we need the legislature to partner with us. There's a lot of talk about $15,000 more per teacher, et cetera. Let's see it. Because remember, in 2019, the commitment was all classroom teachers will make $100,000 a year. Never happened. And so, if people want to make a difference, there's a bunch of people that are staying down in Austin right now. And there's a great opportunity to influence that. And we're begging for that kind of support as we transition into a very complex year. So thank you for putting all this together. I know we're going to talk about it next meeting, next month, probably 3 or 4 more times before May 15th. It's certainly by June when the budget's voted on. Compensation will be voted on sooner than that.
I think, thank you, Mr. Miller, and thank you, Board, for absolutely your commitment in this district to programs and choices for kids and raises for teachers is evident in your budget. And I assure you, when we bring forward the forecast for 24, you will see us articulate in the budget assumptions the commitment that you all have had in this district with a very low tax rate to provide outstanding choice for kids. And also, you've also had a commitment to address the needs of schools, our Title I schools, our schools that are in need of greater resources, and you will see us articulate that for our community when we bring that forecast forward for you. With that very low tax rate, you've accomplished all of that. I just sit here and I think that there is important opportunities in front of this legislature to fully fund public education, which they have not done, ever. And when you take into effect inflation, it's even more underfunded. And we know that Texas ranks at the bottom. We have talked about this every single time on its funding per pupil for public education. They have important opportunities. They can increase the basic allotment, which would help offset inflation costs and would reduce our recapture. They can finance based on enrollment versus attendance, as we know that students and families are still struggling to get to school, but the cost to educate students does not go down when that happens. And I would just thank our elected officials who I do believe are listening to us. And I'm thankful for their partnership, but they have to put their money where their mouth is. And now is a critical time for the citizens of Lewisville ISD for them to honor that you all have made that low tax rate, and they can come through with some funding for our public schools. So I'll just close with that.
Well, Dr. Rapp, thank you for that. I do want to note that while there's a lot of pressure on the legislature, I think that we have seen positive gestures from our delegation. Even this weekend, I believe, parts of the delegation texting Dr. Rapp, asking her to look at pre-bills, pre-filing information, et cetera. And, we've had legislators call us from the floor in the past when they have to make a vote. Remember, the House will caucus more publicly. The Senate will caucus very privately. And make no bones about it, the Senate's going to vote for vouchers. We just have to pray that the House doesn't. They are not. I'll share this real quickly, and I wasn't going to share this. I spoke at a conference this summer with the Commissioner of Education for the Commonwealth of Virginia. You remember how she won? The governor won because of public education, Republican. And Scott Rasmussen and a candidate who was running for school board in Scottsdale, Arizona, where they approved vouchers. And I asked the candidate, what are you going to do with vouchers? And she said, it's a good question because kids have no place to go. So it sounds good to say it. The commissioner of the Commonwealth said, that's the least of our concerns. Our biggest concern in the Commonwealth needs to be the focus on the instruction and learning of our students. School choice is not the answer to that at this point in time. And so, I think this is what I was talking to an administrator in a small school district east of here today. And it's interesting, you see some movement in the House in this direction of supporting vouchers. And we need to continue to fight that. And here's what I would say as I close on this. Go ahead and vote for vouchers and put all these restrictions in place. Put the way that we have to report our financials in place. Put the fact that we have to accept every student. Put the fact that, we forgot to mention we spend, $40 million on special ed or so above what the legislature gives us. You want to take our students away? You want to take the $40 million away? These are things that are not said that we need to continue to say about the way we spend our money. This is the way we spent our money. So come and tell us why you think we're spending our money wrong and in what areas. Which special ed groups kids should we not? Which Title I schools should we not offer football in so these kids have a future, or athletics, or AVID, right? This is the opportunity for our community where we say it all the time, we mean it. This is the opportunity for our community to step up. So with that, I think, Ms. Maloney, you're going to pass it to our head of HR, who's going to look to spend some of this money.
That would be accurate. I was thinking earlier, after that presentation, it would just feel better if we all had a Wonder Wagon costume on right now, because I know I would feel the power if we had that on, but we don't. So tonight, I want us to just look at our salary raises and just get continued feedback and input from you all as we move forward in this process. I do want to just pause and say having the conversations earlier certainly helps us. We have started, as of last week, posting positions for 23-24. And, we still are having a teacher shortage across the state. So being able to have these conversations early and to be out there early and aggressively getting our open positions filled certainly helps us. And so thank you all for being an advocate for having these decisions made earlier, sooner rather than later. We're going to talk about additional compensation contingent upon an increase in funding from the legislature. And then we're going to talk about items that we could consider should funds become available in the fall with additional revenue beyond what is known to us right now. So the first thing we need to talk about are salary increases. And on this slide, I know there's a lot of information on this slide, but we wanted to look at 3 basic approaches to raises. And so in the first section, that is what we're calling the aim for the fences. Like if the legislator were to come through for us, and this is aiming for the fences for sure, we would be looking at anything between an $18 to $18.5 million increase. And to get to that dollar amount, what we would be talking about is a 4% increase for all employees, or a 4% increase for campus staff and a 3% increase for all other staff, which would cost anywhere from $15.7 million to $15.2 million. In addition to those increases, we would look at the teacher market adjustment that we've talked to you all about a couple of times, where we would bring teachers completing year 10 and up to 3rd in the market, which to bring them up to 3rd place in the market would cost an additional $2.8 million, which is 103% of the market. So if we were aiming for the fences, that's what we would see as the increases we would consider. But there is a middle of the road ground for us to look at, which is our cautiously optimistic plan, where we would spend approximately anywhere from $11.85 to $12.35 million. These would be, in the middle of the road plan, would be a 3% for all employees, or a 3% for campus staff and a 2% for all other staff. And you can see what that would cost, $11.7 to $11.2 million. In the middle of the road plan, instead of we would still do a teacher market adjustment, bringing teachers completing year 10 and up. Instead of to 3rd in the market, we would bring them to 5th in the market, into the 25th percentile, which is where we already are with 0 and 5 year teachers. That would cost us $650,000, and that would bring us up to 101 to 102% of the market. And then the third option on the far right is our very cautious option. This one would cost us $7.3 to $7.8 million. This would be a salary increase of 2% for all employees, and or a 2% for campus staff and a 1% for all other staff. If we looked at something like that, it would be a 2% across the board would be $7.8 million. A 2% for campus staff and a 1% for all other staff would be a $7.3 million. I did make note on this slide, especially for people listening from home, the amounts we are talking about would be inclusive of any legislative action. So we're looking at raises tonight and discussing what we are going to approve without knowing what the legislature is going to do. But when we discuss this and we're making considerations, this is inclusive of what legislators would do. So a couple of items that we believe we have a general consensus on, but just want to put them before you one more time before we consider these moving forward, would be the 2 market adjustments that we've discussed with you a couple of different times. The facility service market adjustment that's needed to bring them up to 100%, and the elementary principal adjustment to bring them up to 100%. Those are coming in at $320,000 and $300,000, and then also increasing our local leave days by 2 additional days, bringing us to a total of 5 local leave days. So then we want to talk just a minute about additional compensation that would be contingent upon increased funding from legislators that help us reduce recapture. So these are items, if we were to get increased funding from the legislator that enabled us to reduce our recapture, things we would like to be able to consider. And we have a list of items here. teacher longevity pay, which equals about $2.9 million. A Title I campus-based stipend that could vary anywhere from $933,000 to $4.8 million. A foreign language stipend of $150,000. An increase to our bilingual stipend, which is about $76,000. A special education self-contained stipend, which is about $100,000, and then a special ed general stipend. In other words, for like SDI resource, those type of classes, about $985,000. These are all stipends. If you remember a couple of meetings ago when you all asked me, where are we having our hard-to-fill positions? Well, the bulleted items that I've listed out here are our hard-to-fill areas, and so the stipends are specific to those areas. But if we were to have additional funding, these total about $9 million, but it would certainly help us to focus in on our hard-to-fill areas. And then we could also consider an additional percentage of salary increase, as long as we understand that for every 1% of increase, it's $3.9 million. And then a new stipend that we think would be a plus for us is a coming home stipend, where we pay anyone that is an LISD graduate that then returns home to work and teach in our district a $500 stipend just for returning home to teach in the district. So I'm just going to break these down for you, the different things that we listed there. Teacher longevity pay, we've talked about a few different times. This year, it would cost $2.9 million because we would need to catch up. So at the 5-year for this year, anyone that has worked in LISD, a teacher who has worked in LISD 5, 6, 7, 8, or 9 years would get the 5-year payment. Same would be true with 10. So anyone that worked 10, 11, 12, 13, or 14 would get the 10-year payment. So this year, in the catch-up year, it would cost us almost $3 million. In future years, it would cost us about $350,000. This is definitely longevity pay for teachers who have been in Lewisville ISD, and you're giving them this bump in pay every 5 years. Now, we actually spent time until late Friday talking to our TRS rep to make sure that we knew all the criteria for how this pay would be TRS eligible. And in order to do that, it has to be paid out monthly, and it has to be paid out monthly in the year that they are getting the service. Those are some pretty specific criteria that TRS has. You can pay it out in a one-time payment at the end, but it is not TRS eligible if you do that. So in order for it to be TRS eligible, we would have to pay it out during their 5th year or during their 10th year, throughout the year. A Title I stipend. So for all of the next types of stipends we're talking about, we compared to our market like we always typically do. There are 3 districts that report paying a Title I stipend anywhere between $3,100 and $5,000. 17 of the 20 do not report paying a Title I stipend. So that causes the market rate to be $600. If we were to give a $600 stipend to the teachers on Title I campuses, that would be roughly $933,000. If we gave a $3,100 stipend to teachers on a Title campus, that would cost us $4.8 million. A foreign language stipend. There are 7 districts that pay anywhere from $1,000 to $3,000 for a foreign language. There are 13 that do not report paying any type of stipend, so the market rate is $2,000. We have 75 foreign language campus teachers. If we had a stipend of $2,000, it'd be $150,000. So bilingual, we currently have a bilingual stipend of $3,500. The market rate right now for bilingual is $4,000. If we increased our bilingual stipend to be $4,000. It's a $500 increase. It will cost us $76,000. This is a stipend we've actually increased over the last 2 years. We've taken it up in $500 increments over the last 5 years. So right now, for a self-contained special ed classroom, we currently pay $2,500. The market has the stipend for a SPED self-contained room anywhere between $1,500 and $4,000. If we wanted to increase it, I mean, we are currently at market, but if we wanted to increase it and raise it an additional $500, that would cost us $97,000. And we do not currently pay a stipend to our special ed teachers who are not in a self-contained environment. But if we wanted to consider that for our inclusion, our SDI, our resource teachers, the market rate is $2,000. We have 491 SPED general teachers, so a $2,000 stipend for that group would cost $985,000. And then the coming home stipend is $500. That would be for anyone that we could attract here in the district to return to the district. So then we have a couple of items that we would consider in the fall after school starts should funds become available. And those are really just the one-time payment that we've talked about before, where we give $500 prior to winter break for all staff. If we were to follow a similar process that we've done in the past with this, $250 would be for part-time, $500 for full-time. If we used that method again, it would cost us $3.3 million. If we gave $500 to all staff, regardless of full-time or part-time, it would cost us $3.5 million. So obviously that's a lot to discuss and talk through, but those are kind of the options that we present, knowing that it's a challenge and appreciating the conversation.
Okay. Who wants to start? Jenny?
I'll get my magic 8-ball out. This is probably going to sound more and more like a broken record, but we have 6,500 staff. Those 6,500 staff picked up the phone and called their state representative to increase the basic allotment. We could do a lot of those things. I'm not going to say everything because that's for a discussion. I want to do the 4%, but I just heard from Ms. Maloney that that's probably not really going to be in the cards. It is up to people to advocate for themselves. And I would encourage every staff member and every spouse of a staff member to call your local legislator, because that is who controls our purse. We don't control our own purse. And to Ms. Taylor's point about how you get a better budget is you get more funding. And that's what we need. We need more funding. If you're looking for just some thoughts, I am not for differentiating between staff. I think that it's not about it's about appreciating all of our staff, because it takes every staff member to make this district work, and it takes every staff member to help educate kids, and I want to appreciate their contribution to that. A lot of it's, once again, I'm going to say it's based on a magic 8-ball. I would like to see, when it comes to the stipends, I think that is where we can be more competitive than some of our neighboring districts. And I would encourage us to do so, especially in those hard-to-find areas. But other than that, I mean, my magic 8-ball's not working, so.
Thank you, Jenny. Dr. Bonner?
Yeah, so I agree with Ms. Prosnick. 4% on the heels of what we did last year would be outstanding, but not in the cards tonight, right? Ms. Maloney's figures on projected budget and expense, or excuse me, projected revenue and expenses shows that LISD taxpayers come up with 84% of the cost for this district, whereas the state comes up with 13%. And that's been pretty historic the last several years. And the federal government comes in with 3%. And so, you know, again, to Ms. Prosnick's point, there's 151 legislatures down there right now, meeting 150, 31 senators down there right now talking about property tax reduction, right? And as Ms. Maloney pointed out earlier, that has to be paired with an adjustment to the basic allotment, or it's going to cripple us. And so start those emails, start those letters, start those phone calls, because absent any of that, anything that we are able to cobble together is going to be not what we want to do. It's going to be less than what we'd like to do to reward our teachers and our assistant principals and our counselors and our nurses and our principals less than we want to. So, you know, when I looked at the packet this weekend, I thought, surely we're not going to talk about budget right before compensation. It's actually it was placed pretty well. I might have forgotten if it'd been up at the front, and now we're going to talk about compensation later, or maybe talk about compensation first and then budget. So it was probably pretty effectively structured in the agenda. So thank you. That's all my rambling.
Thank you, Dr. Bonner.
Thanks for all your work, and I mean, add a girl, add a boy for filling all those positions. That's tremendous, and I'm so glad that, you know, because that helps everyone. You know, so just, I'm sure what everybody's kind of thinking after that presentation, you know, it just breaks my heart, but I mean, I can't in good consciousness, you know, with you know, not knowing what the legislature's going to do, you know. I've already been down there once, going to go again, you know, talking to people. So it's not that we're not doing anything, you know, sitting at this table either. But I guess just overall, you know, I also think that whatever we do for one, we should do for all, really, because it's been trying times for everyone in education right now. And to be honest, I mean, you're talking about a difference of maybe $500,000, which is kind of a drop in the proverbial bucket here. I mean, when you talk about budgeting in general, 100% think that we should bring, you know, the 2 positions that you mentioned there up to market. I mean, I think that's pretty crucial to do. Of the rest of the things on there, I guess just the only thing that I would say is, you know, for the special ed, you know, the SDI teachers and such, you know, I can personally speak to the, you know, the amount of work that they have to do is just crazy. All teachers work hard. I'm not trying to take anything away from anybody else, but these SDI teachers, they are doing mounds and mounds and mounds of paperwork, you know, in our meetings and things like that, that just, I know they work at home, you know, a ton. And so I would love to see, you know, a stipend for them for sure. You know, I guess that's pretty much all I got to say.
This just, it blows me away when we go down to Austin, and somebody that I was down there with, and I'm not going to mention her name, but wisely said, you know, we have 2 systems and they don't even function correctly. They're not even fixed yet, and yet we're wanting to add another one from our state legislators. They can't even get this system right. We do not collect the tax base here in our district for our own coffers. We collect it for the state, for their will and their distribution. And that's very different. And they put it on our backs. I've been at places where our legislators are saying, well, talk to your district if you're not happy with what you collect or what they're collecting from you. And so here, we've heard the charge of if you think we can save money, here's my charge. If you think that, or you don't understand the finance system and how we are collecting for the state, talk to one of us. Talk to Ms. Maloney. Talk to somebody that understands that system. There is no other system where, and in a world market, accounting is so different than in school finance. There's nothing like it. There's nothing like that. You can be an accountant out in the world, and there is nothing like the school finance system. Because in the world market, when your revenues are down, you start just cutting. Well, our customer base is our students. And what we have discovered over the years is that we are needing more to do what the legislator is telling us has to be done. And yet they're not giving it to us. We're not going into campuses and just closing campuses because we don't have the money to do what they're telling us to do. We've never done that. In my 7 years on this board, we have never done that. We have looked at what was for the good of the students, and I believe that we will continue to do that as a board. I would love to do the 4%. I don't think 4% is enough. And if you talk to a legislator, they'll tell you 4% isn't enough, but they're not going to tell you, they're not going to work with you to fix it, or they haven't in the past. And I'm hoping that this year we see a change, and that we see a change that they can help us change that, but also make that sustainable. So don't just tell us to do something and then walk away and start campaigning for your next 2 years. Shame on you. So I would love to do the 4. I want to get closer down to I'd like to see the next where we land. I think that we're going to be in a world of hurt. But yet I want to do as much as we can for our staff, and I don't want to differentiate, because I think we've seen this in the past. We keep differentiating year after year, and you see those non-campus people are dropping while the non-campus or the campus people are rising, and pretty soon our intentions are not pure. And so I think that we need to do, we've all walked this path, especially this last year and the last few years, arm in arm. And I think that we need to walk arm in arm through whatever we're going to do for them. So that's just my 2 cents.
Thank you, Kathleen.
If you don't know who your legislators are, whorepresentsme.com will tell you. Call the offices. I also concur. I would love to give 4%. I'm not comfortable with that right now. With no additional revenue coming in, and then an additional 18 million affecting future issues within the district scares the bejeebies out of me, and I'm not even going to be here. Could you share a spreadsheet of all the lovely options that you have? I could create one, but do you have a spreadsheet that you could share with us that I could play around with too? I think a lot of these things of trying to make sure that the teachers who aren't quite at market or not high enough at market in this particular environment, I think that's very important to make sure we retain the teachers. I love the idea of the longevity pay to make sure that we do retain our teachers in this particular market is a great one. Of course, some of the issues with the bilinguals and the Title I stipends, I think, are very important. I think that we're one of the few that don't do it in the district, and that does impact teachers potentially wanting to move to those campuses. I would love to see just a spreadsheet where I could play around with the numbers to see what I might be personally comfortable with for longevity.
A spreadsheet of the stipends?
All of it.
Okay.
If you have it. If not, I can create it. But if you have it, others on the board might also be interested in seeing it. Just because there's lots of options, and we've never been able to fund it, and this is even worse this year with all the issues. And we on this board, we absolutely understand that the inflation has been tackling all of our teachers. We understand that tremendously because it's impacting us too. And so we want desperately to make sure that we get closer to alleviating some of those issues. It's just we don't have a magical money tree.
Well, Tim Chafin is the spreadsheet guru king, and so we'll get that to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hassan.
I guess I just agree with everything that my colleagues have said around the table. I think I really appreciate the public display of passion that I hear around the board table, because it's easy for people in the community to feel like, I don't know, we don't care, we're not spending the money wisely, as our president mentioned. What are we doing to tighten our belts, that kind of thing, and you don't know until you get around this table. I mean, I was out campaigning last year, and interestingly enough, thinking, I can bring my skill set to the board, and I can find all this money, and I can, alleviate all these expenses. And then, like President Miller said, when I took a look at the budget and a deep dive, I'm like, they don't have anywhere to cut, to provide the experience that we need to provide for our students and our teachers. I think I agree with the rest of my colleagues in saying I would love to aim for the fences, but unless the board buys some winning lottery tickets, I don't know how that's going to happen. But I will agree too that the onus is on our legislators, and so they say a lot of things to get elected, like everyone does, right? Because everybody wants to win their election, but they really need to commit to doing the right thing as it relates to public education and our teachers, because I fall on the side of wanting everything for our teachers, and I think everybody feels that way too, but even more so as somebody with a child still coming through LISD, even thinking about COVID, where I had some responsibility as a learning, whatever I was, coach. You have to be in that profession. You have to love it and love kids. You're not here to get rich, clearly. But I think we need to show appreciation to our staff. And I think the way that we do it is through compensation. Now, where we land on that, kind of hard to say, because you already know you're dealing with this large deficit. Are you adding to it with no action from the legislature? How are we going to pay for it? But I think it's that important that we got to figure something out so that we recognize our teachers. I think I may have been the board member that wanted to know the difference in if we had to make the hard decisions between who gets a raise and maybe who doesn't get one this time, between the administration and the teachers. And I think Ms. Lasan mentioned it's not enough to even talk about $500K. So I fall along the lines with everyone that I think, if we are doing a raise, it needs to go to everybody and just show our appreciation and our commitment to the stewardship that we talked about as it relates to our teacher resources. And of course, it goes without saying that some of the stipends I agree with in some of the hard to fill roles around special ed, around, I can't remember the other one. And of course, obviously, I'm always going to fight for Title I because my child is in a Title I school. So those are my comments.
Thank you, Ms. Taylor. Let me ask you this question, and then I'll go into my points. Can a bilingual, self-contained teacher at a Title I campus collect 3 stipends at a time? Okay. So I think we are in a position where it's going to be difficult to aim for the fences. I don't think people should. There are a lot of teachers watching this because we'll be deciding this in April. So there'll be a number of discussions. There'll be some processes some movement within the legislature. We'll see what happens. I don't have a problem considering options that put pressure on the legislature. Now, I think we need to remember Our solution for the legislature is not the governor saying, I'm going to give $15,000 per teacher. It's the basic allotment. Because $15,000 for a teacher that starts at 60 or making 65 is different than a teacher in a school district that's making 42 or 36. And so these irresponsible kind of broad statements about we're going to give this much money to teachers is not responsible. Because in relative terms, it's different. So that's one thing. I actually am kind of a fan of the middle option with the things that you provided, longevity pay, et cetera. I'm not for the Title I stipend, and I'll tell you why. We provide more money to Title I schools. We provide more volunteerism. We provide more community support than we do with any one of our other schools. In 2014, we had a teacher, principal, stand right here. Christy and I were at the dais and was talking about using Title I dollars that summer for the purchase of an iPad. Didn't make sense to me why we just didn't buy the darn iPad and let them put it towards staff. But I think there's always an opportunity to, have our chiefs look at the utilization of, with the principals, their Title I dollars. They're getting more money. The only reason I'm a little apprehensive there is this. I'm not convinced. How would you make sure that a Title I stipend is getting quality teachers? I'll give you an example. Let's say I teach at Liberty or Bridlewood or Hicks, been there for 15, 20 years. I can make an extra $1,000 or $2,000 by moving to Mill Street, Central, Rockbrook. There's no guarantee that that's going to happen. There's no guarantee that that movement is going to bring quality teachers that are actually going to change the instructional outcomes, because the instructional outcomes are often dependent, as they are nationally, from an SES perspective. So I just get a little cautious. I do appreciate that there's a need for us to look at this, and I think we'll look at what the funding is on a Title I level. But let's park that for a second. I take longevity pay, the other stipends, even the coming home. I think that's a good idea, as long as they're coming home and they're LISD graduates, not coming back to LISD because they left. So it's coming home. About $4.2 million. So you take the $4.2 million on top of 12, you're at 16. You're not that far off of where we've been. And certainly it puts pressure on the legislature, right? So what's our option, though? In an inflationary environment where when we look at long-term planning for bonds or other types of capacity, we're looking at 12% inflation. Best case, we might get to 10% in the out years, 8% in the out years. So if you start giving 2% to raises and then 1% to administration, and that's all we do, I think it's insufficient, and I don't think it shows a gesture towards the teachers. Now, again, I know that a greater option than that puts a lot of pressure on us and our capacity within the fund balance, and it also puts pressure on the legislature. But when we did a similar adjustment to what we're talking about here, because in number 2 you have market adjustments. It doesn't get us to the top, the third, like number 1, but it gets us to 5th in the market for 10-year plus. We tried to do that before. Remember, a couple years ago, we did kind of a market adjustment for those tenured teachers. So it's sending a strong message towards them. And I'm willing to rethink the Title I thing if you could show me how you're going to guarantee that improves instructional outcomes, right? And why would a teacher go there? And then, did you want to say something before I finished?
I'll wait.
Okay. And then I think again, basic allotment, got to push for that. the middle tier is where I would lean. Very receptive to the stipends. I agree with Ms. Prosnick. Stipends are an area where, there's always been, every year, we haven't this year, but now we're talking about it, so we'll get them, emails about, are our stipends competitive with neighboring districts? And, you guys know the answer to that. Dr. Bonner probably does as well. Maybe that's an opportunity for us. But certainly in hard-to-fill positions, why not? Because the amount of money, if you take longevity pay out of that list of things, you take Title I out of that, you're actually only at about 1.3 million. So all those stipend things you're looking at, it's not that much money. Again, minus longevity pay and Title I. And I'm a huge fan of longevity pay. So with that said, that's where I'm leaning. I think it's going to be an interesting April because it may be a night of motions and amendments and motions and amendments. Just prepare for that. But I do, the one way to maybe not have that take place, and you know what I'm talking about, right? Motion on 2%, amendment, okay, just prepare for that. I do think Ms. Hassett has a good point. If we can build that spreadsheet, which probably you already have in some fashion, those who like to twiddle around with it can move some things around and, add this or that. And here's the other thing I would leave with, and then I would give it to Dr. Bonner. We did one year do a differentiated, and I put this on the table, and I'm in retrospect, there's a lot of things you do different. But we gave administration less money. But here's what was different back then. I don't remember a discussion that said, but if you give administration less money, it's not even going to be $500,000. To Allison's point, it's not that much difference. And we should have gone with an administrative adjustment that was similar to everybody else because the total amount, and I just don't remember us hearing that it was just going to be $500,000 or whatever it was back then, right? And so that's an important distinction. I think Allison's bringing up something there that, to create that differentiation between administration and, again, I think it's there's a lot of good input here for you guys to think about, and I know you guys will process it intensely. With that, I'll turn over to Dr. Bonner.
Staff that work in Lewisville ISD are blessed to have a wide variety of campuses to work at, right, and commit their careers to. Those folks who choose to work at a title campus do so for, in most cases, in my experience, missional value, right? They are there for a reason. And I am never one to throw money at a problem, but I'd recommend giving it a chance and then hold the principals accountable for finding staff that have that missional approach to instruction and also would be attracted to a little bit more money. So I'd push back with you a little bit on will it work? Well, our principals are charged with making it work. It would give them an extra recruiting tool and then let them decide, because, working at any campus is not easy. Working at a title campus is a little bit of a different sort of challenge than at another sort of school. So I would say that it would be money well spent, and that we would entrust our principals finding staff that have that missional approach. Thank you.
And I appreciate. So to be clear, I'm thinking in my mind trade-offs, right? Buckets, and so I would be receptive to how we contemplate that to that point, because but here's the question: do you have to retroactive all the teachers that are there? I assume you do. Okay, so then why wouldn't I leave a campus and come back a couple years later and then I can get
You would give the benefit to the people that are there now. You wouldn't retro anything. You would if that was granted, and we're really getting into Ms. Smith's bailiwick on how to implement it, but you'd give the stipend to people that are there now.
Okay, that's what when I say retroactive, I'm actually talking about you would apply it to the current base of teachers in Title I campuses. And I don't disagree with anything Dr. Bonner said, and I'd be open to hearing that case. I've never met a teacher in LISD that said I teach in a Title I campus, and I think I need more money because of it. However, it's an interesting point to say, why don't we put the options on the table and let the principals determine if that's one of the things that they need to address the issues? I think that's a fair thing for us, and you can put that in the spreadsheet that Christie's asked for.
Mr. Miller, I would also like to add that if we're going to start talking about adding stipend and correlating them to student performance, that must be for all stipends, not just Title I campuses.
I have a question, and this may be for Ms. Maloney and not you. I'm going to take us into the land of fairy tales right now. Come along. In April, we approve 4%, and then the legislature does not come through. We don't approve budget until much later, correct? So then we would have to go back and say, sorry about that 4%. I mean, I'm curious where that puts us in contracts with teachers that we hire and things like that. That's just, what's going on in my head, because as Mr. Miller said, that would be in some way putting the pressure more on our legislators of, this is what we promised and said we could do because you all have said you're going to do this. I'm kind of curious where that puts us in those negotiations.
I'm going to give my 2 cents, and then I will definitely give it to Paige. But when we hire people and we offer them a contract, we tell them what their salary is going to be. And so if you pass an increase in April, then we're out there campaigning and recruiting on what those new salaries are. And so if we tell a teacher coming in that their salary is going to be X based on that 4% that we pass in April, and then it comes back not to be that, we would be obligated to tear up that contract. Like, they would no longer be contractually obligated to us. And so that could be that could really put our principals in a bind because they've hired these people who then might back out. That's the contract piece.
I would agree with that. And I mean, I would say that the things that I've seen when you want to be more conservative is if you would wait until and not be able to do anything until we have all the way till the end of August to be able to do that. And then the other thing that you can do is you can write into your compensation plan, if funds become available, of course that compensation won't be creditable for 1 year. I mean, because if funds would become available, we would give this dollar amount, but you wouldn't be able to do that over the 12 months, as Ms. Smith was speaking about earlier, and it would not be creditable.
So, but we could do, if funds become available, could we do that as a caveat to what we do in April, is my question.
I don't think with the contracts that go out, and once you've approved something that can be, creditable over time, I don't think we would want to go down that road.
But
could I ask a question? I think maybe Ms. Brozek, there's a different way to approach a question, if I could. You approve an option 2, for example, and whatever miscellaneous, and then you say, in the event that funds come available, I think any educator that says, well, hey, listen, LISD wants to tear up my contract and give me more money because of the legislature, I think they're willing to do that. Because I don't think what you mean is, hey, go backwards, right? And that's where you have a problem, right? So you could say, we're going to go with option 2.
Should funds be
really lobby the legislature? If we get more money, and we'd have to, that's going to have to be like some language around that, Deanne, right? What does that look like? And then we would allocate that so that people don't think that we're going down this path, and if we get the basic allotment that's really outrageous, that we're going to put it towards something else. Our intention is to give it towards the predominant area of focus of our expenses, which is salaries. Would you both agree that we could do something like that and then add to it if the versus take away?
I went back to one of the slides, and this is probably my fault for going over this slide too fast, but the next to last bullet literally says, this is literally in the section of if the legislator does something in our favor, then we could go back in and pass an additional 1% raise. So if you as a board in April were comfortable, semi-comfortable with a 3% across the board increase, and then we get to June or July and we have a better idea of what the legislator is going to do, then we could come back together and still pass an additional 1% that is still in the budget, because we're not at the close of the budget season at that time, still in the budget, and it nets the raise that you all, say you want to give now, and for very valid reasons are hesitant with, and I totally get that. But yes, we absolutely could pass a portion now and know we've got an additional 1% sitting there that we could come back and visit in July or June.
The only comment I wanted to make on the, last year at the budget workshop, we did have a spreadsheet that we did live, because there are a very many ways to put combinations together. So my recommendation really would be on March 28th, when you've got the fiscal year 24 forecast, that's really the time to have the spreadsheet, because it's all about what tolerance, of course, are you all willing to have in light of that fiscal year 24 forecast. So I would say let's get to the budget workshop. Let's have the spreadsheet activity there if we could, when you see your fiscal year 24. And then after that, if you want to continue to have the spreadsheet for your own homework, then we can turn it over at that time.
It would be helpful if, when we're talking about doing something extra, that an increase, and once again, an increase of $500 in the basic allotment would give us this much money.
800. Everybody needs to ask for $800 in basic allotment.
Well, I'd like 1,000, but there you go. Christy only wants 800. I want 1,000. But I mean, what does that look like so that we can see? I think that would help me with my tolerance in going forward at that budget workshop.
And one little nugget of good news: there are a couple of things in the current statutory there are a couple of little increases that we know we're going to get, so we'll have that built in there as well, and then probably do it in increments of 200, just to make it, less columns.
Okay. Sheila, thank you very much, as always. This is great work, and this is probably one of our more difficult decisions every year. And I hope that the staff appreciates, here's the thing, there's no free rent in our, where that's coming from. There's no free rent in our heads. And a lot of us have space in our head that's occupied focused on this, with a lot of other things, and we're trying to figure out how to make this work. Because those of us that are employers, we're getting the same thing. The difference is, we can find it in revenue. That's the big difference in running a business. You can find it in revenue. You can lower your margins, right, against current revenue. We are limited because of the funding model here. So this is a great presentation, as always. And so thank you for that, this and Ms. Maloney as well. And Tim, looking forward to Tim's spreadsheet. I'm sure that spreadsheet will probably ultimately get to Austin with some of our legislative delegation, and Dr. Rapp will be ready to get some text messages to answer some of those questions sooner rather than later. So thank you very much. All right, Ms. Maloney, 4 items for you under the financial report.
Yes, and as Mr. Fipe makes his way to the stage, thank you so much. Our next item is the preliminary guaranteed maximum price to begin the band towers at all 5 high schools.
Good evening, President Miller, Dr. Rapp, and the board. So, as Ms. Maloney mentioned, I'm here to discuss the preliminary guaranteed maximum price for these band towers. Just as a reminder, the need is really due to both the condition of the existing band towers, and we're also providing a much safer, newer style of tower. So, definitely a big upgrade there. So last month, the board approved both the architect and the construction manager at risk firms for this project. Since that time, Glenn Partners has done a fantastic job. They've actually gotten the entire design completed, and this project actually bids this Friday by Hill & Wilkinson to our subcontractors. During the design process, Hill & Wilkinson reached out to several fabricators for two things. One, to get it on their radar, and then the other was to try and gauge what kind of fabrication time we would be looking at for these. It's anticipated that these towers will take from 3 to 5 months to fabricate, but we'll know a lot more once we open those bids and get the commitments. We are working with Fine Arts to determine what type of schedule works. And what I mean by that is, let's say that it comes back that we can get a couple of these towers done before July 1st, before band camp. We're looking at which high schools make the most sense to start with, maybe which high schools would be willing to let us do this work during marching band season, and then which high schools say, no way, wait till after marching band season to start our campus. So obviously we couldn't get the GMP finalized and together for this March board, and so due to the time frame, but we are presenting a preliminary GMP, which will be on the consent agenda on March 20th for $200,000. And that amount basically allows Hill & Wilkinson to act swiftly after the bids are open, work with their subcontractors and suppliers, get contracts in place, start shop drawings, and hopefully start that fabrication and get us in line so we can hopefully get some of this work done this summer. It will also allow for the purchase of any other long lead items. Those potentially really on this project could just be like electrical components. There are some electrical needs and Wi-Fi on those towers as well. So we will be bringing back the full GMP to the board in April for approval, and this $200,000 will then just become a part of that overall GMP, and I'll mention that again next month when I bring that item. So with that, I've got Ms. Drinkwater here with me, and hopefully between both of us we can answer any questions that you may have.
Any questions?
Good luck getting a band director to let you
Yeah.
interrupt. To interrupt. That's all. Godspeed.
I agree.
How are you going to split that baby, Ms. Drinkwater? Oh, yeah, I bet that'll go pretty well. Let us know how those, you want to record them and share them with us? No, sir. So I guess the question is, why can't we get them all done? I mean, $200,000 projects, these are small projects. I get they're very important and they need to be safe, but.
Yeah, so the $200,000 is just the down payment, so to speak, right? This isn't the full GMP. So the main reason we wouldn't be able to get them done is just the fabrication time. So these towers are quite extensive. It's a lot of steel. It has to be galvanized. It has to be built in sections. So it's quite an undertaking. And for actually, Hill & Wilkinson is actually looking at, should we go with, just one company or multiple companies in order to get several towers in production at one time. So we'll know a lot more once we open those bids and see what the commitments can be. Yeah.
So you're going to have the GMP, the full GMP on the consent. So you'll have, or just this?
Just this. Yeah, next month I'll have the full GMP in April. Yeah, unfortunately, because of timing, we just couldn't make this. We couldn't have the full GMP here.
And you expect the full GMP in May?
We'll have it in April.
No, I'm sorry. You're right. I keep thinking that our next meeting is in April. Got it. Thank you.
Perfect.
Appreciate it. Let us know how it goes.
All right. Thank you.
Ms. Maloney?
Thank you so much, and I think that Mr. Martin from Hilltops is going to join me up here, but this item is a debt service update. We've talked about our defeasance opportunity for this year, the parameters order that we set at the beginning of the year. At the last meeting, or the last work session, we talked about our restructure opportunity to manage our tax rate. But tonight, we have a special new opportunity that can coincide with this refund that we are going to do. And we actually, because it is nuanced and a little different than anything that we've ever seen before, we brought the board debt management committee together last week, a couple weeks ago, and I'm sure that they will weigh in after Mr. Martin speaks to us, but we won't go through quickly, and Mr. Martin, I've got it on the screen. We've got our defeasance plan here, and our defeasance program here, and that slide, and the refunding that we've been over to manage our tax rate, and we've talked about how we want to keep that debt service payment up where we need it to be next year, so that should we be able to go out for future debt, that we would be set up nicely to do that. So I don't think that we have to talk a lot about that, but I'll forward on to this other opportunity that Mr. Martin is going to take us through.
Thanks, Paige. The opportunity that's come into play here is a result, really, with the interest rates increasing since you all did your taxable advance refunding of bonds in 2020. So that issue was done, as you'll recall, in 2017. I know Mr. Miller and Ms. Hassett, when we came and did an advance refunding there towards the end of the year, right before the Tax Act changed, where we could not do tax-exempt advance refundings anymore. So we were able to generate significant savings. The markets were good to us at that point in time. And believe it or not, those taxable rates were in the 2% range. Then taxable, not tax-exempt. So there's bondholders out there that are not getting very much yield right now. Those bonds are not callable. However, we can offer to buy them back, and by doing that is called a tender offer. And so it works similar to a refunding, but it's not at our option, it's at the owner's option. So what we have to do is find that price where they want to get out of that crappy yield that they're getting by comparison, and be able just to go ahead and take their loss and move on down the road and buy something that might give them a little more yield. A lot of times what you're looking for in these cases are the big-time institutional investors, such as property and casualty insurance and so forth. So the bonds that we're talking about here, particularly the 2020 A's, we have a very large bondholder of $22 million with a property and casualty insurance company that we've talked to on another project that they're also own a lot of bonds, and they are a player, and they have indicated an interest, at least for another issuer. Don't see why they wouldn't be interested to work with LISD as well. So it's just a situation where we're able, because the 2020 deal refunded 2013 bonds, and that call date, that escrow no longer exists, so we can now do tax-exempt bonds. So thank you. That escrow is gone, and so we can now replace that with a tax-exempt deal. So we're going to buy, the objective is to buy these bonds back at 75, 80 cents on the dollar, and then we will issue, to be able to purchase those bonds, we will issue refunding bonds, just like we've done for current refundings and advance refundings. It's just, instead of putting your money in, putting the proceeds of the bonds in an escrow, you're purchasing the bonds from the investor. So immediately on that day, you close on your bond issue, you wire the money and you buy those bonds back, and they're gone. So that's in essence how it works. The 2020 A's and 2020 B's. 2020 B's were non-PSF bonds. You've heard about the permanent school fund guarantee is not available. It is available for refunding bonds. So the 2020 A's were PSF guaranteed, so that guarantee will flip over to the refunding. So you don't have to go through the whole process, worry about whether there's money in the PSF or not. The 2020 B's were non-PSF. They cannot be refunded as PSF, so they would have to stay that way if we chose to go after and ask for a tender of those bonds as well. The next sheet is some information that was provided to us by Jeffries, who has we're working with on another couple of clients for a tender offer refunding. And this shows you on the left side what was saved from the 2020A and 2020B refundings on the left side there. So you can see the aggregate results there at the bottom. And then on the right side, this assumes that what additional savings may occur if we're able to get the bonds tendered back. One is if we assume half of them, we can get half of them, and the other one assumes that we can get 100%. So that would take your overall savings from, I'm having a hard time seeing it, I don't have it in front of me, sorry. to 10.2 million if we got 100%. What is it? What do you see there? 9 point something?
6.9 to 8.5, 8.6. Yeah.
It's worthwhile to do. So there's some pretty significant additional savings there that we never. This is really, as I've explained to Paige when we had the debt service committee. Is that what y'all call it? Debt service committee? Yeah. Together. That this is really just a cherry on top. We know what our objective is. We know where we want to take some of our cash, our surplus cash, and we want to redeem those bonds, pay cash for those. That the current bonds that we have, those higher interest bonds, the non-PSF bonds, get out of those 5% coupons, and so we can do that. We have that option. That's all our choice, and then we'll fill that hole that we've got for next year's. As a result of the cash defeasance, and we refund up, and then that's an additional part because we're paying off those 2014s that we'd be refunding that much earlier as well. So your overall average life of your debt gets shorter, which is a great thing. You're again, principal reduction. That's the name of the game here that we're trying to accomplish. So this is just a cherry on top, really, if it works. So for it to work, here is a graph that shows you what could happen if we are successful. So these are rates that are a little stale. Market has been moving quite a bit, very volatile. But this shows you, going left to right, the series 2020A and the 2020B, and the maturities in each series. So look at those interest rates, those taxable interest rates back in 2020. So they were in the 1% range. Then we had some premium bonds there for the 2020 maturity of the A's and the 2026 maturity of the B's. And that the money piece, if you will, is that $31 million that we'd like to try to get tendered. That's the 2030 maturity of the 2020A bonds. That's where we have one bondholder that's 22 million of that. So that's what's driving the deal. And what ends up happening there is if we can get the new taxable yield down, if you look at the new yield and the present value savings, that's what ends up happening. So the idea is to see if we can buy those bonds back at a discount. Again, you buy those at less than 100 cents on the dollar. We then sell them at new tax-exempt rates. So that's kind of shows you the game. The next few pages are, we've shown you, this is what the notice that Denton County has put out on the MSRB electronic filing notice. And this is really the starting point that we would like to get a head nod from you all this evening to move forward with. We cannot or have anyone contact bondholders about this unless we've notified all the bondholders in the world that we're doing this. So it's a full disclosure type of thing to tell everybody that we are thinking about doing this. There is no promise. If you read the fine print in this notice, it says nothing. It just basically says we're thinking about doing this. We may or may not, and here are the bonds that we're looking at. So that's what that would look like, and that's what would start the process and then give us an idea if we should move forward along and package a tender offer as the third tier of the cash defeasance, the refunding, and then the third tier would be the tender.
And if we don't get the interest, we just pull back and don't even go there.
If they start making calls and they say, yeah, I'm not really interested, or if the price is not right, we can't agree on a price, it's like, all right, we move on.
The notification does not obligate us to anything.
That's right.
It just goes up on Emma.
Yeah.
And both calendars are included in if we were to do a regular restructure or if we were to pursue the tender based on the data that we collect from the bond.
Yeah, and the idea behind that is cost sharing, really, with the cost of issuance, so we can be able to prorate that out with the three pieces and reduce the overall cost and thus produce more net present value savings.
Mr. Miller, I'd also like to add that we know with the bond committee that we created, we have new policy that we review this at the beginning of the year. which was a great idea. However, this has come up new, and we don't want to ignore things that will benefit us just because it didn't fall in line with what we had already reviewed. So this is a new item that's come up, which is a great idea to bring forth to us. And like we said, this isn't an action item today for us to take action on. This is, are we interested for them to pursue something that could benefit us in the future? And if so, they will bring it back to us. We will have the same guardrails provided to them as we would in any other refunding offer. We won't accept the offer unless it has XYZ attached to it. So it's the same type things, but if we're calling it a new name is basically what the deal is.
We would have to bring back a new parameters order that would include this nuanced opportunity.
I guess I had a question on if we were to agree to this, is there any cost outlay for going through this process?
Great question, Ms. Taylor. There is a chance that you might have some stranded costs if the deal does not go through. If you move forward, and we recommend that you move forward with it, and we go through the tender process and it falls apart. So then the tender agent or the information agent, the fee is somewhere between $30,000 and $40,000 that we could get hung with, but we can roll that cost into the refunding, even for something that didn't really have anything to do to refunding, but it did have something to do with the overall debt issuance. So it would be a qualified cost. It just would take away from the savings from the refunding.
And Mr. Marr, I do have a question, because I know that Denton County is also looking at doing this, correct? What's the timing for theirs? Because I'd like to learn from them.
I wish I had a definitive answer for that, and so we're still trying to figure out projects. We were hoping to go to Commissioner's Court here next Tuesday, and we're notified this morning that has been pushed off. They're not quite ready. So they've got all these projects from their authorization. They're trying to figure out how to divvy up and prioritize what roads come
we will
first.
be their guinea pig.
You may be the first one out. There's
I
another.
am happy for LISD to lead the way.
Yeah, there's another very large school district that we represent in Houston that's also under consideration.
If you're looking for a head nod, I'm head nodding.
Me too.
Yeah, I think this is okay. Everybody's violently shaking their heads, and I think to Ms. Hassett's point, when we establish something like the debt service committee, which this is the first year we've done that, and it's been it was brought forward by board members. It's a great idea. We're much more deliberate and intentional about our moves, and I think that even with that, us trying to contemplate everything, which, I remember the last time we were going to defeat something, or we had a week where the market changed on us. I think it went away, right? So timing is everything, but I think the committee will always want to be very flexible and bring these forward. If we lose $30,000 out of this, it's money, but I doubt if we are going to lose $30,000. I'd be interested in privately. I can't say it publicly who owns those bonds for us, what kind of PNC or whatever. Now we would not be competing with bond holders that the county has, that bonds that the county has being serviced, right? It's a different debt holders.
Yeah, okay. They may be the same debt holder, but they've still got these massive, huge portfolios, and this is a different animal. This is a PSF, bond versus a AAA GO bond. It's a little bit different animal.
So the Fed sucked up all these bonds. Now they're starting to release bonds out. It's not a good market for bonds yet. It may be in a couple months. It may be in a year, right? But not right now. It could be a good deal for us to get them at a subsidized rate and resell them later. That's essentially the net.
And there's some options here that we can do with what we originally thought of with the $65 million that, in the slide that I've got up now, that, what our original plan is, because there might be better use for that cash, given the fact that the yield curve right now looks like an upside-down Nike swoosh. So it just goes like this.
Okay. So we're not taking a vote, but it sounds like this is a good idea for us to look into this and do some due diligence on. And I think that's what you're looking for. That's where we should take it.
Okay.
And we can report back out and updates like what kind of interest we're getting once we get it out there.
Thank you. Thank you, John.
There was a question on something else about the fund balance.
Oh, just
As long as I'm
the
here.
question
The separate
earlier.
question was for me, which is currently our debt for our fund balance for our INS. We have it at 75 days, right?
Oh, for the fund balance
For the-
fund
yeah.
balance resolution.
Right.
The 25%, like if we were to
Yeah.
fall, on a ratings call, if we were to fall below our 25% of expenditures in our fund balance policy.
You're talking about general fund, though,
In the
right?
general fund, yes.
Right, yeah, it's the general fund policy. The INS fund that gets swept. So, the criteria that the rating agencies are looking for a highly rated district like you is to have at least a 25% fund balance. And once we dip below that, we should have a plan to replenish that. So it's not uncommon that something may happen, that you have a large project, but there is a plan. The problem with Texas schools is you all have been saying over and over tonight, you're restricted by revenue. You can't just go raise rates, so that's different than other local governments that can say, okay, well, we'll raise the INS tax rate, or we'll just raise the, maintenance tax rate, a penny, and we'll make it up and we'll put it back in there next year. So it's a little more difficult for schools, and so they're more highly scrutinized, especially in Texas. And for those very reasons, because you're restricted on revenue, is why not all the rating agencies will give a AAA rating to schools.
So
you're the highest you can get.
It will jeopardize the AAA potentially. It could potentially.
It could potentially jeopardize your AA plus. I'm not saying it will, but it could. It will be a nick on the report.
You're talking about 25% of the INS?
No. I misspoke, Mr. Miller. I was talking about our general fund.
I don't think we're in trouble. I don't think we're at risk of
with our first presentation tonight that Ms. Maloney
25% of the
25% of expenditures.
Right, and that's a state number, or is that a number we control?
It's a number we control that's based on bond council's rating.
Right, but we can change that number.
But then it would affect bond council rating. We created the policy because bond councils rate to get a AA rating.
Standard & Poor's and Fitch.
Right, but if they're PSF back, doesn't that factor in as well?
No, we're still going to get a nick if our M&O fund balance dips below 25% and we don't have of expenses and we don't have a plan to figure out how to raise taxes, then we're going to get a nick on next time we try to.
But at this juncture, if we were to do this in the next 3 to 6 months, that wouldn't be a problem.
It wouldn't affect these. It would affect long-term values of.
This is a separate question.
Got it. For a separate set of issues, I believe, right? Got it. I think I understand now. Thank you. Thank you, John. Good to see you. Ms. Maloney.
Thank you, President Miller. And I think Mr. Kosh is going to make his way up to the. Oh, there he is.
We're here to talk about graduation. It's upon us again, and if you look at the dates up there, we're talking 24, 25, 26. Just so just to follow up about graduation venues, in August we did a review of our time, and we kind of talked a little bit about our time at the Star and then back at UNT, and the pluses and minuses and the pros and the cons there. And the guiding principle that we had with the graduation venues, we want a venue that provides the necessary capacity as well as the safety and security measures for all the attendees. And then the overall aspect is we want it to be a quality experience for the families for the 13 years that they've had students go through the system. A venue was identified at the Star in Frisco for the class of 24, 25, and 26. What does LISD gain with a multi-year venue agreement with the Star? The size meets all the graduation capacities. The venue also will address the current safety and security needs of the district. The venue price that provides for marketing, it provides for marketing revenue generated opportunities for multi-year agreements that will help offset the overall cost. So that's what we gain by this multi-year agreement with the Star. Considerations for the class of 24, 25, and 26. A big one is not scheduling graduation on Memorial Day holiday weekend. When we scheduled on those, we see an increase in cost with labor for safety and security, both with individuals running the facility, but then also with the municipalities providing law enforcement on those weekends. So avoiding those days, that holiday, the proposed agreement for the 24 graduation ceremony would allow for 8 tickets per graduate, up to 8,000 attendees per ceremony. And that is pretty common across other districts with graduation services. Lewisville High School attendance, just as a reminder for graduation, was 6,800. So, we're over that. And the final ticket numbers will be determined each year of the contract as we get into 24, 25, and 26. We know where we're going to be in 24 and 25 and 26, and we know which students we have. But the Star, and Mr. Martin could probably talk a little bit more about that, is as we get further down the line, they're less definite with their proposals through the city and then other activities they have there in Frisco. So the next steps, consent item you'll see on March 20th. That gives us 16 months to prepare for graduation 2024, working with Bill Lee about marketing and revenue, some generation opportunities for all 5 high schools plus the district to help offset those costs. So that's kind of what you will see coming on March 20th. Questions, comments?
So typically, recently, our finals have been for high school. School has ended Memorial Day weekend, and then, so what would be, if we continue with that particular calendar-ish, we would have school finals ending Memorial Day weekend, a week past, and then we'll have graduation.
That's correct. Working with Dr. Miller, we kind of estimated what it would look like, and that's exactly right. So then we would finish school, have the Memorial Day weekend, and then there would be several days until the graduation service.
Are we going to try to have weekday or weekend graduations?
With the Star, they're very limited on parking because of the businesses that operate there, and so it is going to be a weekend opportunity where, much like what we've done before, 3 on one day, 2 on the other.
Okay, because I know that multiple parents in the district also schedule, so we need to broadcast this out to families, because oftentimes the second our graduation's over, they're vacationing somewhere, so we need to make sure we're marketing to our...
I would say we would be in trouble if we were talking about graduation 23, 24, 25, 26. We've got some time to make those decisions and then get that information out there loud and clear on every channel we have.
I don't know if this is a question or more of a comment. Saw that we talked about number of tickets, and it sounds like you're still kind of fleshing that out. Are we saying that each school there'll be parity where there's the same number of tickets, or like a percentage of graduates drives the tickets? I guess, what are we thinking there? Just because I've gotten so many people reaching out to me specifically on that issue.
I haven't seen the exact wording in the contract, but what was discussed was 8 tickets per graduate.
Okay, for all schools?
That's correct.
Okay.
But the difference here was, I believe, we would be able to have more students on the floor, which is what creates that parity.
Right.
And often we don't have 8 tickets per student used, right?
That's correct. So the field at the Star obviously accommodates the large classes, and the 8 tickets per. Once we get into that, it can be determined, I think, per campus how they're going to distribute those. If it's just going to be a flat-out distribution, here's student A, you get 8 tickets, or some type of request system. So that is to be determined. But the main thing is that they would guarantee us the 8 tickets or the 8,000 spectators or fans versus a lower number, which would be very inconveniencing.
Thank you. Are you good, Jenny?
Where are we in line to choose our date? I know Frisco ISD gets first kick at the can at the Star, plus there are other venues that they use.
I wish I would say we were first because we should be, but we're not. I believe we are number 2 in line. Which really
that's really good. That's a higher number than I thought we were going to get. So good job.
That helps us to avoid that Memorial weekend.
We'll never be number 1. A board member said to me once they put $28 million into it. They expect to be number 1. So
they should be. No, they should be. And that was part of the deal that they made with the city, because I would like to remind everybody that the city of Frisco actually owns the Star, and it is managed by Jerry Jones and Company. But the city, owns the Star.
Thank you. Any other questions? Thanks, Jeff. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, Ms. Maloney, you got one more.
One more. Thank you so much, President Miller, Dr. Rapp, members of the board. These that we are to the consent agenda preview. This is your Cliff Notes when you take out your massive consent agenda for the March 20th regular board meeting. The first 2 items have been discussion items this evening, the internet access related products and services, and the one that Mr. Kosh just reported on for high school graduation. The utility contractor services, that's a job order contract. It's used on an as-needed basis for excavation and repair-like activities only as needed, should we would need that. The door access control, security, and related products is in our safety and security budget and department. There are 118 doors. We're requesting to add door access controls for 118 across our campuses, and then an additional 52 exterior food service doors to get that access, and that'll be paid for out of the child nutrition budget. The polystyrene foam recycling units and related products, repairs, and services is a part of our 240 child nutrition spend down plan, and we have had that before and are continuing that, and it is approved as a part of the spend down plan. The indoor and outdoor sports surfaces is going to be new weight flooring. We have budgeted $750,000 in this budget for new weight rooms as a result of the facility walks that Dr. Rapp did last spring. And this is the first installment, or the first thing that we'll be doing is getting the rubber flooring in all of the main weight rooms at the high schools. They've been worn down by years of usage. For facility services vehicles, these were the 2 single cab trucks that we were not able to get because of an unexpected closing of the factory order portal. Originally, those trucks had V8 engines, and now they only sell V6 engines. 2 really good things out of this is the price is better, and they have better fuel savings for the ones that weren't available that we originally procured. Under annual purchases, the one there is our student information system, Skyward, to renew that for 3 years. I would be remiss with all of the reporting required that we have for state reporting. We do not receive $1 for implementing or buying our student information system to keep up with all of the mandates and attendance requirements that we have to get our funding, et cetera. And then the last one is the career and technical education Supplies and equipment bid. This is because of a need in our growing programs in CTE. The items can be very unique. The price or the things that we have been purchasing have gone up over the past 3 years. For example, 3 years ago we only spent $180,000 in this bid. But I would point out that in the Perkins grant, not the general fund, but in the Perkins grant alone, that robotic welder is over $100,000 purchase alone. So as our CTE opportunities increase, some of these items that are very unique require special attention.
That's it?
The end.
You want anything, Rap? Any questions? All right. Hey, guys, you're up.
All right, thank you, Mr. Miller. These, I think, will be fairly quick. Up for discussion tonight are two telecommunication items. The first one is related to our internet access. Our current internet contract expires June 30th, 2023. So just to remind the board, currently we have two 20 gig circuits for internet service, one from UPN and the other one through Region 11 Consortium. What we're looking for is pricing for options for 3 to 5 years. I do want to point out that we do not expect to need more than the 20 gig over the next 5 years, just looking at what our current usage is. And if you recall, in response to COVID, we increased that bandwidth. We really did need it at the time, but I think we're at probably around 60%, 50 to 60% of those circuits right now. So I think that's kind of stabilized. So we're working with procurement and contracts to finalize a recommendation for the board. The plan is to bring that recommendation forward to the board by March 20th for the internet component. That's all I have for that particular topic.
Go to the next item.
Okay. The next item, again, is another telecommunication product. This one is actually for our actual phone service. So when somebody picks up a phone, gets dial tone, can make a call out. That contract also expires June 30th of 2023. The district uses what are called SIP trunks for that phone service. We are also in the process of working with procurement contracts on this as well, but also looking at the possibility of, the current service, but also trying to keep options open for any type of resiliency that could come out of that. Obviously, in the last couple of weeks, we've been dealing with some fiber-related issues, and obviously when that happens, we end up with some outages. And phone outages is difficult to manage because people want to be able to call in and call out. In addition to the SIP circuits, we have 470 analog lines. That'd be, what you'd consider the old POTS line, plain old telephone service. That's used for elevator, fire, emergency lines. We, are going to get pricing for that as well, but we're also looking at, there's some new technology where it allows you to use voice over LTE lines. So we're going to look at that as an option as well. Again, we're looking at pricing options for 3 and 5 year terms. And once we complete that procurement with the process working with procurement contracts, we'll bring a recommendation to the board at a future board meeting. Yeah.
That's it.
I know you had spoke a while ago that you're trying to do 3 year terms, possibly giving a little bit more flexibility with the changing rate of technology. I think wouldn't 3 years be great for this, especially if we wanted to change it and use a new contract for security to use more of the, you never know what security features are wanting to be added through.
Yeah, certainly we'll look at that. I think, if my memory's right, quite a ways back before we got into the 5 year period, I think we had one that was like 5 years, one that was 3 years with the option of 2 additional years. That's something I think we would look at in this process as well, but also there could be some longer term value in having multi-year pricing as well. Chris, anything to add on that?
Yeah, I would say especially with the internet piece, most of the security related features on that are stuff that we have outside of our internet service. So the one big piece that you can get with internet service is distributed denial of service protection, which we currently have through Fiber 11. And so if that's one of the vendors that's chosen, if we renew with them, then we would continue to have that distributed denial of service protection. That's the main thing you can get from included with your internet piece. The rest of the cybersecurity pieces would be stuff that we're already doing and will continue to do. So a 5-year term, especially on the internet, I'm completely fine with. If the service is good and the carrier is good, it's a good way to lock in value and lock in that rate for that whole 5 years.
Any other questions?
Okay, no, thanks, guys.
All right, thank you.
Have a great week. Have a great spring break. All right, DLB.
TSM board. What you have before you that has been presented in board book is a board policy update 120, complete with explanation as to why we have those. It's important to know that this is one of our cleanup revisions. It's things that we are already doing, but now our policies will match practice that goes with that. It's also important to note that when we do get these updates, they are reviewed by the respective departments. They're not something that's just automatically accepted. They're reviewed, they're edited, and they're revised to make sure they comply with LISD's goals. I will take any questions.
Okay, this is Board of Trustees reports. Does anybody have a committee that they want to report on? Okay. Oh, you have a presentation? Wow. All right, not worried.
So one of the things that we decided as an audit committee back when Mr. Miller was even on it was that we needed an audit tracker. And we had been approached by an outside vendor to do it for us, of course at a fee. And we felt that we could certainly do it ourselves like we do many other things. So this is just and I want to thank Dr. Miller very much. Where is she? Hiding back there. She was very helpful in putting this together and in getting this ball rolling. So as you can see, it's basically the recommendation, the priority is either going to be high, medium, or low, the timeline, the status, and kind of anything special. So for example, this is the construction audit tab here. We will be sending out to the board. We need to get your input on where you see the priority. And of course, everything cannot be high, for the record. There's also comments from administration of where we are in the process so that, once again, we can look at this. This will be housed on our intranet, so you can look at it at your leisure. Here's the overall status tab. What you can't see on here that you will be able to see is at the bottom is each one of the audits. So like there would be the governance audit, the PEMS audit, and all of those recommendations and everything else. We will be looking at this and reviewing the status. We will do it once in the fall and once in the spring so that we can make sure that we are that the recommendations that come forward that the board wants done, that those things are being worked on and looked at and moving forward. And also you heard it earlier tonight from McConnell and Jones, the transportation audit is in full swing and so forth. Just look for an email from me so I can get your input on some of the priorities. You have a question.
Do have a question, shocking. The priorities, I think it would be great if we saw the priorities listed in the audit itself and then if we could curd or not, because it's different.
I did send that out earlier and I got no response on that from anybody, so I'm going to send it out in this form.
Okay, but while we select ours, I want to see a side-by-side. I want to see what the audit has said is
That's what's listed, is what the audit said.
Okay, so then we concur or not concur?
Plus, so what you'll see is, I'm going to make one up, recommend that we hire 150 teachers. administration says, that's really nice, we can only afford 50. And then our response is, no, we want this to be a high priority. And then the measure would be, we're in the process of hiring 150. Does that make sense?
So the priority,
if we make it a high priority, so every one of the auditing agencies gave their priority.
right, but we're not listing that here.
No, we're listing our priority. How
Yeah.
we see it, how we see the priority.
I would
It is listed
disagree.
in their, it is listed in their comments.
Yeah, I think it needs to be more spelled out, just so that we know what the professionals who provided the information to us said, and whether we concur or not, and see additional information from the.
But it is listed. When we put in the remarks from the audit, it says what the auditor's recommendation is.
In a column all by itself.
Not in a column all by
Which is
itself.
what I was asking. I think it makes it easier and quicker for trustees to go through and audit all of these and provide opinions to all of these items if we can easily see what was provided rather than having to dig through the information.
How about let's send it out and look at it, and if it doesn't give what you need, because I think it does. So let's look at what you need, and then if it doesn't, we'll fix it.
Okay, we'll get this put up on the internet for you.
Yeah.
And that's it.
Thank you, Jenny. Thank you, Audit Committee. Any other committees? Legislative Committee, we're not doing anything because Ms. Maloney, our Chief of Staff, our Superintendent are kind of leading that effort. I think where's Bryn? The Employee Banquet Committee will be adjourned at some point. Oh, hey, there you are. Right? We're talking. And Debt Service Committee, you guys already presented. Superintendent Evaluation, already in process. I think that's everything, right? We don't have any naming committee on the table. So, with that said, if there's no other business, this meeting is adjourned at 9:11 p.m. Y'all have a great spring break.